Looks like Daredevil's back, but is that a good thing? Let's talk about it. Hey there, this is your Math Doodle to my Thomas Hands Doodle right here with another video, and today I'll talk about Daredevil, Born Again, Episode 1 and 2, and everything I liked, I didn't like, and things I feel like I'm going to slowly enjoy. Now, when the show was first announced, they were going to basically say this is a completely new Daredevil. It's nothing related to the one in Netflix, so it was supposed to be all fresh. But they were still going to have Charlie Cox as Daredevil, so that was interesting. The suit was going to be similar to the one in Daredevil, so that was weird. And they were going to say that, Karen and Foggy were not going to be in the show at all. Either they were going to be killed off screen or just never mentioned. And it seemed like there was a huge outburst about it, to the point where while they were making the show, they had seen what they had. Apparently it wasn't good, and they had stopped production and basically started from scratch. It looks like they still had some stuff from the previous idea, because at the moment it does feel like a cobbled up mess at points. And you can tell by the first few episodes, it feels like basically another reshoot from what they were trying to make now. And then the second episode does feel like what they originally wanted to do, because it feels very different from the first episode. Because when we get into the first episode, it starts to feel like, we're back in the Netflix Daredevil world. We see Karen, Foggy, and Matt all together being, friends like they used to be. They're at a bar that they seem to have so much memories about that we've never seen before. Looks like they're having a retirement for a guy named Cherry that I do like in the rest of the show at the moment. And it looks like they're just enjoying things. But it looks like we're going back to, Daredevil things. We have Foggy basically protecting someone, and Matt overhears it, and he's ready to suit up as Daredevil. But, of course, Foggy never liked Matt being Daredevil, so he tries to get him to, not do it. But Matt is Matt, and he goes to, help whatever way he can. But then that leads me into something that I have, some weird, I'm very back and forth with, which is the fact that this version of Daredevil now basically is very flexible and very acrobatic. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but this is technically supposed to be the same Daredevil as the Netflix version. So it feels like a huge tonal whiplash seeing, a very grounded Daredevil being able to do these, being able to run, flip, use his sticks as grappling hooks, or use them like Spider-Man's spider webs, right? And I'm like, did this Daredevil somehow get even more strength and a much durable body than what he did back then? And you may be saying oh, why are you criticizing it? Aren't you glad that Daredevil is able to move like he does in the comics? Of course I'm glad about that. But it just feels very different, right? And it feels like certain points where the CGI does look weird. Because there was this one scene that I know a lot of people were praising, where Daredevil was on top of a building, and behind him was another building with the church's glass going over his head like he's a halo. And when you look at it as just an image, it does look cool. But the way he gets there, it looked very janky and kind of threw me off. But that could just be me. Maybe it's just that I just noticed the CGI a lot. And I know it's probably because they had a rush while making this episode. Because again, this show right now seems like it's a very compiled mess. But it also looks like we're leading to Bullseye. And we kind of see his costume. And I'm going to be very honest, I've seen the leaks on it, and I'm not a huge fan of it. I never understood the reason of making a supervillain's mask have that basically ski mask instead of their normal masks. I always find that kind of strange. Overall, his bottom costume looks fine, and I like that in his glove you kind of see the Bullseye logo, so that's cool. I hope they change the costume, but by the way the show seemed, I'm not 100% sure. And then it kind of leads me into Daredevil suit. I wasn't sure if I was going to mention it, but I had also seen his suit in leaks before the show came out, and I was not a fan because of the fact that it was a very bright red, and it had black. I am fine with the red. I miss when Daredevil was actually able to, have bright costume. I feel like the black does kind of offset it though, not in a good way. Because at least to me, it feels like they're too drastic. I feel like it could have worked. You didn't have to change anything if you just changed the black to being a more maroon color, so you can kind of allude to, the comic costume where they would shade the boots and gloves a little differently. And I feel like that would make the boots look cooler, because I don't like the black boots they have it. But it looks like in the show they kind of muted the colors down because it was at nighttime, and maybe they're going to change the suit, but I'm not sure. But that leads me into what Bullseye does. He shot Foggy. And when I saw that, I'm like, oh my god, they're going to kill him off. Because I knew a lot of the stuff, what they were going to do beforehand, you kind of knew where they was going. But I do love this gun punch they do here, where you slowly hear Foggy's heartbeat from Matt, and it's cool. And the fight between Bullseye and Matt is something that I was excited about. But again, I feel like because they had more of a budget, and because they can use CGI more, it didn't feel real. The fight was cool at points because they can move a lot better. They probably be a lot bit safer, but it did feel like the punches weren't real. And this was supposed to be a more hyped up hallway fight scene, but instead of a hallway, it's stairs to go up. And it is cool seeing the lack of empathy that Bullseye has, because when he's trying to escape from Daredevil, he is just casually killing people. And you're like, oh my God, these people are just trying to check what's going on. And they immediately get killed. And I'm like, dang. But you see Daredevil doing everything he can to protect him. And that is something I really like. It was cool seeing, all the blades getting all over Daredevil's suit. And that looked painful. That actually did look cool. But while they were going up there, you could hear Foggy's voice, and it started slowing. And when you get up there and you see Matt is extremely angry at Bullseye, and Bullseye, it just does not care. And that was cool. That was cool that we got to see the fact that Bullseye has completely lost it. He does not care about trying to act normal or have any empathy, because in the original show, he had basically shown he was a psychopath. But it's also Charlie Cox acting here, being so angry and like basically smiling through the mask while also being angry, was really interesting. But then you see that, he lost it because Foggy had died, and we saw his last breath or his last heartbeat. And I didn't expect it to be as impactful, even though I basically knew this was going to happen. But with Foggy dying, we see Matt just done with Bullseye, and he just tosses him. And when I first saw that, I'm like, what? That just seemed out of nowhere. But then when you really think about it, he's tired. He's tired of having these morals, and that's his best friend. That's actually something I really was like interested, because normally we see, the hero has their loved one, mostly a love interest, die, and that gives them the motivation, or that makes them, upset. But it's cool seeing, just familial love, or having basically a best friend be that reason why this guy, stops being a hero, which is something you don't really see that often. But because we've known Foggy for so long, it does hit that hard. And I think they did that really well, which is why I feel like, because they have the Disney budget, but not the time, it kind of ruined some of those parts where, like, you have like the hallway fight scene, or Matt, doing Daredevil things, doing the gymnastic things that you're usually supposed to do. But that's just me. And one thing I'm surprised about, how did Bullseye even survive this? Now, the only way I can even like figure this out as him surviving it at all was the fact that, he had his spine experimented on with some sort of like fictional metal. And I'm not sure if they're changing it from the one they had in there and making adamantium, which is, the one that he has in the comics. But I don't think they're really going to point that out, because it looks like he's going to go into jail, as they show later on in this episode. Now, this is where you can kind of tell that they kind of rewrote this show, because this episode completely feels like something they had made so they can lead into the show they were trying to make originally. Because we have literally them just going into 1 year later, not getting into any detail about what happened in between, of like Matt grieving, Matt, stopping being Daredevil, or what happened to Karen. All we see is that apparently they're going to go to Bullseye's trial. Matt's there to, tell his side to not let him get out. And we see Karen's there to be there for Foggy, but also to tell Matt that she's going to San Francisco or Chicago? I can't remember which one. And you can also tell that, they're leading to something else, because it looks like Matt has a completely new life. He's basically has his own law firm with this lady named McDuffie, but looks like he's much more successful and is able to have more sustainability in his career, which is kind of sad and ironic that he got more successful without his best friend, which kind of shows that you can have, the success, but without people you love, what's the point? And you can see that it does hurt Matt here. He has this new law partner, but it doesn't look like they're as close, except the part that in this show they're, also bringing this new love interest for Matt. They're having McDuffie set him up with a lawyer, which I don't know too much about her. Looks like they're going to get more in depth with her, but I want to talk about it in a little bit later, because it looks like Wilson Fisk is back, to run for mayor, as he was kind of alluded in the last few times he was there, from Hawkeye to Echo. So there's that. The weird thing about this is that, like, because they're just bringing in the Daredevil continuity as this one, it kind of makes it weird, because we see in the MCU version of Kingpin, he is way stronger. He can survive crashes in the car, or he can rip car doors like it's nothing. So that was weird. But one thing I do like about this is they don't show that strength. They try to show him being a menace psychologically, not physically. He still does the normal Kingpin, but in a very sneakier way. And what's funny is, because of all the recovery he had to do because of Echo, basically shooting his eyes, he kind of stopped talking with his wife, with Vanessa, which is so weird, because in the last original series, they were very close. She was really messed up too. So it looks like she actually took up his business while he was away. It looks like they had some marital problems, that with the point where she basically had an affair with another guy. And I don't think that guy's going to survive, to be honest. Now, there was just one point in this episode where I was back and forth on, because they had promoted it so much in advertisings and commercial, of Matt and Kingpin talking together, because they wanted to check each other's lives, which is so weird seeing the enemies acting like good friends, which maybe because the actual actors are probably friends outside of the show, it's kind of hard to see them as actual, like, more tense. But I do like what they were trying to do, make you more uncomfortable when Kingpin basically tries to threaten Matt with anything, because he basically asks him if he has kids. And normally these are weird questions to ask if he's your enemy, but it's like, if Matt has kids, Kingpin has a way of blackmailing Matt. He can't blackmail him with money, he can't blackmail him because he's Daredevil. And one thing I like is that Kingpin, because he's a bad person, he basically says, I'm not killing people anymore, just like you. And Matt's like, I've never killed anyone. And to be honest, that's true, but I like that Kingpin cannot see anyone else not want to kill, if that makes sense. But that's just the way I saw that. And I like that Matt is obviously trying to, make sure that he wants to keep an eye on Kingpin, and that, he doesn't want him to be evil. But, of course, Kingpin in this show is trying to be mayor. And that's another thing that I found kind of weird, is that he kind of just felt like mayor, like that, like it was nothing. Now, I do feel like it was because of being rushed, as I do feel like this episode was, but they were able to do really well with what they had. Now, one thing I do like, and I was not really a fan of originally, was how they were showing Matt's abilities nowadays. In the last show, they obviously had, Matt, focus his hearing on other people. But in this one, it feels more focused. Like, everything will be gone, and it was just the thing he's focusing on. But I do like that. And a little thing that I noticed, at least in the first two episodes, they do a lot, is doing a documentary about what they think about Daredevil in the city and what they're thinking about it. And I so far like that, but I'm feeling they could get annoying at some point unless they do something different with that. But that's just me. That was episode 1 of Daredevil. That episode was a good segue into the second episode, because of the fact they were able to take away Karen and Foggy and giving Matt a new life. And in the new episode, you kind of see where the Frankenstein of the show kind of works, because we see Matt having a whole new life, basically having a relationship with this therapist. We see Matt still do his normal things, and we get to see a kind of new storyline, which I feel like the reason why they didn't, just scrap and make the show what it was originally was because of the fact of this new guy, who's apparently the White Tiger, and the actor had passed away. So I don't think they wanted to just scrap that idea entirely and just leave his entire scenes out, which I understand. It's like, it would be really disrespectful if you took out his scenes. And also, I am really fond that they actually were able to have a Latino superhero. As a Latino myself, I know he's not Mexican, but it is nice to see a Latino in general. But in this episode, we get to basically see his trial, because we see the White Tiger outside of his suit. If you don't know who the White Tiger is in general, he's basically a superhero that, has an amulet that gives him strength. And this is like a toned down version of like Black Panther for like a tiger. And he fights crime. Now, you may know White Tiger from the Ultimate Spider-Man show, where it was his niece, I think it was. And that's the version I grew up with, or the one I knew about. But it looks like we're going with the guy, and that in this version, he was just going to go home. It looked like he had flowers, and he was going to go home in the subway station, and he saw some guys beating up this random other guy, and he was ready to stop them. And it looked like one was trying to get him from the back, but he had fell and basically got hit by a train, which that kind of leads me into the fact that because this is more in line with the Netflix version, they're able to be more brutal and more bloody, which I do appreciate because of how the reputation of Disney Plus shows. So that was a surprise. But it turned out the guys who were beating up the other guy were cops. So he was arrested. And it looks like Matt, whole thing would be try to clear the White Tiger's identity. And that's actually one thing that really weirds me out. And I'm actually also kind of find it cool, is that the fact that because now this is in the MCU, they can be as obvious about heroes as they want. They can be like, oh yeah, this guy has a magical amulet. He wasn't using it when he was fighting these guys. He should just be exaggerating. And the fact that they were able to just be very chill about that was funny, but weirdly satisfying. I feel like what people think when we criticize that they're always talking about other heroes in other films is that oh, you just don't want to hear about other heroes. No, it's the way they do it. Here, it's just casually, hey, this guy has superpowers. But he wasn't using them at the time of the attack, right? One thing I like and that I will always love about Matt is that he went to Hector. Is his name Hector? I forgot. But he went to him to basically see, hey, you're telling the truth. But because they're able to be completely obvious about superheroes around, what is the criteria of a guy, fighting crime in New York City? Because he looked like he was obviously wearing a mask, and he was obviously kind of hiding his suit that Cherry basically had to find, which it looks like now that Cherry is actually working with Matt as his bodyguard or helper. I'm not sure what his job was, but I do like Cherry so far in the show because he basically found the White Tiger suit and basically had to tell Matt, because Matt had realized if he had not known that this guy was the White Tiger, it would have been much worse, which I like that Matt is able to find pieces to help him. But one thing that I found really cool was the fact that, they're able to show the corrupt nature of the police against White Tiger and what he did, because technically by that version he had killed a cop, but it was obviously out of self-defense, but how dangerous the cops can be. It was really cool of the tension that they had there, and showing what they're going to do with the cops is really interesting, which I want to talk about later. But it looks like Matt was able to find the guy that was getting assaulted by the cops, so he can basically clear the White Tiger's identity. And if you notice, I have said the White Tiger instead of the character's name. It's kind of because I kind of forgot, so don't hate me. But he had tracked him down and had basically told the guy, "You're our only witness," to basically show the White Tiger had not just randomly had attacked the cops, and you can do so much good. But I love I love that they were able to show that the guy is scared. He's worried about what's going to happen. And we kind of see what's going to happen when we find out that the cop who was a partner of the one that died had come in to basically kill the witness, so the White Tiger could not be free. But it also looks like that these guys that basically beat up the witness are Punisher fans, because it shows one of them had a tattoo of the Punisher logo with the American flag with a stripe on it, which gets me really excited, because it looks like they're going to do the storyline where there's a bunch of cops who take up the Punisher's code and vigilantism of just killing whoever they believe are just actual criminals. The reason why I like this is because it's supposed to show that Punisher does not like these people. He does not like anyone who does the things he does, because to him, if they kill innocent people, they are murderers, and Punisher will kill murderers. It doesn't matter who they are, because Punisher believes that they are above that. That's why they did the code, and Punisher had said he got rid of that. But the fact that they didn't, and they're still using their power to hurt people, it would be so cool to see what Punisher's going to do, because we know that Punisher is going to be in the show. The actor is coming back, but I've heard that he's not going to be there too much, so I'm wondering what they're going to do with him. But back in the show itself, because the cops were coming to kill the witness, Matt had to try to keep his cool, not show anything that's going on, because he's trying to stop being Daredevil. But one thing that I found really interesting was that these cops do not care. They were ready to just beat on a blind person. And if Matt didn't do anything, he would have died. So he basically had to come out with his ninja moves, basically, and fight them. But I think one thing that I really liked and found really gross was the fact that they were able to show bones breaking, the way he moves people, the way he was able to throw someone to a fridge and the head bleeding. And when he beat them up really badly, it looked like he killed them. I don't know how they're going to explain this for the next episode, but it looks like Matt had killed these guys. But I really hope that's not the case, because that's supposed to be Daredevil's thing, that he doesn't kill. And I know that, basically he feels like he did with Bullseye, but he technically didn't kill him, so there's that. But you do notice that, Daredevil has avoided going to his church, probably because he can't talk to someone like Father Lanton, right? The father that died because of Bullseye. But there is his mother, so I don't know why he doesn't talk to her. Maybe there's some Catholic reason why he can't do that. If you're religious, tell me why in the comments down below. I'd really like to know. But it looks like he's going back to his old ways, because he is losing it. He yelled in disbelief. But I really hope he didn't kill them. Now, there is this other plot that seems to be going on with Kingpin, being mayor now, and him changing laws and, doing his mayoral duties or whatever. And this one commissioner from the police was trying to basically say he's going to make Kingpin's life hell, right? To be the worst mayor and not be there that much. But it looks like Kingpin has another leg up, because of course he's Kingpin. So basically the commissioner is ready to leave, but Kingpin basically threatens him that he's going to cut funding for any police officers. So of course he stays, and he's going to try to make Punisher's life hell. The only problem with that is that, of course, Kingpin has some dirt on him, because it looks like he has his kid hiding somewhere. It looks like it's the commissioner's kid from the fair or something. Which, why isn't there just any good people in New York when it comes to these shows? It looks like we're actually going into Muse, which is supposed to be the main bad guy in the show, which is supposed to be a villain that does graffiti art with blood and actual human remains, which is disgusting. But we get a scene of him. We see that Matt's girlfriend had done a book signing, and this kid had walked up to her very disturbed, and I'm wondering what they're going to do with him here. And I think that is Muse. But then it also leads to the fact that she turns out to be the therapist to Kingpin and Vanessa, which normally that would seem kind of weird, right? Just something to happen. My first thought when I first saw that they were doing this was that Kingpin is going to use his silver tongue and try to get the therapist on his side, or maybe Vanessa's going to do the same. And I'm worried that they're going to use her by blackmailing her or basically manipulating her the entire session, because, they're them. And it's going to ruin the relationship between Matt and her. Sorry, I've forgotten a lot of their names. I've re-recorded this video many, many times. And I'm feeling like they're doing the therapy session with her specifically to hurt Matt. But that's just my thoughts on that. Was anyone else as uncomfortable and tense as I was watching this? Today, I'll talk about Daredevil, Episode 3. This show ended up being a lot better than I expected, mainly because it was a Disney Plus show. But watching the first 2 episodes and then watching this episode, it feels like a good successor to the Daredevil Netflix show. Not that it's perfect. There are still things that I don't really like. Like I said in the last episode, that, Daredevil's CGI moving is really weird and it doesn't feel as impactful. But if you can get back to that, you'll probably like it. And especially with this episode, because there isn't really any fighting. And I was surprised I would like that, because we start out with Daredevil talking with White Tiger. I'm sorry I forgot his name again. About how they're going to be able to win this because they're going to get the witness that saw White Tiger basically save him. But I also like that they were talking about how Matt was trying to say that the White Tiger is going to basically stop being the White Tiger, and that you may actually like it. And you can obviously tell that he's not telling him because, he just wants to let him just be normal. He's basically saying it to himself to basically confirm that, he doesn't need to be Daredevil and that he probably likes it better. And that's probably because in the last episode, he had brutalized those 2 crooked cops. And speaking of those crooked cops, I am so surprised they are alive. I legit thought they were going to be dead because of how Matt had, beat them up. But apparently they're alive, because when Matt is in the bathroom, he saw one of the cops there who only had, a bruise in his eye. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that neck of yours should be broken, but you're lucky that you're alive. I don't know what Daredevil did. But that makes me wonder, does this guy know that Matt Murdock is Daredevil or some form of superhero? Because this is the MCU, so they can be as wacky as they want with it. Or does this guy just think that Matt's a really good fighter even though he's blind, which is really weird. But one thing I do like is that because they both were doing illegal stuff, they really can't snitch on each other, because Matt basically tells the guy, hey, if you say anything, you try to literally kill the witness. And the guy is trying to say, well, you were trying to tampering evidence. And it's like, dang, that is smart. But I'm really worried that this may bite Matt in the ass a little bit later because of the whole fight. Maybe the guy's going to figure out a way, because later on we see what happens. But before we get there, I do like that this entire episode is more of a courthouse scene. I miss that for Daredevil, but it is very impactful because we see Matt doing his best to comfort the White Tiger, to make him feel welcome, which I do like, because he basically tells him, to calm himself when the crooked cop is basically saying, oh, me and my buddy were best friends. We did things together like friends, just to, get sympathy points by the jury. And he's basically blaming the White Tiger for just being there, just beating him up, which is so stupid. And I find that really good and really sleazy. But this is the thing that really made me so tense that I was not expecting. And that's why I feel like this is a good successor from the Netflix show, because of how tense it was able to be. Because the witness himself, the guy who's in the train tracks, turned out to be an informant for the cops, but I guess he was being beat up on, apparently. Also, this is kind of weird and kind of interesting. The way to get this guy to actually go with Cherry to, to reveal everything, he basically gives him coke. Shouldn't that be wrong? Basically giving your witness something that's not good? Or is that something that actually happens in court cases? I know this is probably wrong, and if you are in law, please let me know. I would really like to know. But they try to take him, and I like the fact that during this time, and Matt is, trying to do anything to convince the jury that the White Tiger is innocent, he hears the cops basically say that, okay, the jury cannot be alive, cannot come into the stands. And I'm like, God damn, these cops are terrible. And you can tell that, too, because of the tattoos some of them have. And you would think that all these cops are terrible, but not really, which I'm surprised about. But the reason why I said I was really tense with the witness going to the courthouse is because you can see that we think that he went with Cherry in a trailer, but then the cops are there to basically kill him. And surprise, surprise, the witness is not there, and he went to with another guy to a taxi to go to the courthouse, which I found so cool and very stressful. Because like, oh my god, is he gonna be able to get it? Is he gonna be, not even just because you're worried that he's gonna get him, but is he gonna get there on time? Because that was a big worry that Matt was having, and I totally understood that. It was like, that's why I said this feels like a successor, because you feel the tension, you feel the worry in this show, like, oh my god, things could get messy, and I love that. It's something I miss. Again, because it was a Disney Plus show, I was worried about that. But speaking of that worry, while the witness is there, basically about to tell everything his story, the most unexpected thing happens, because of course it's a Daredevil show. He basically lied and said he was just home, instead of saying that he saw the White Tiger help him, which I think was because he saw all those cops there. And that was horrible, because that was Daredevil's one defense. That was his only way of showing that the White Tiger was innocent, and that must suck. And you're like, what is he going to do? How is he going to get out of this? And I was like that too. It's been so long when I'm also being the one like, okay, what are you going to do, Matt? What are you going to do to actually get the White Tiger out of this? Your client. I have not done that in a very long time when it comes to a show, especially not in a Marvel show. Not even a Marvel movie, in fact. But the way Matt actually decided to, help the White Tiger's case is by revealing that he's the White Tiger, even though in the last episode, he basically had told the judge, hey, don't mention White Tiger because, it's a bad thing. It'll skew the jury to a certain conclusion. And a lot of people are saying that this was probably Matt's plan. I don't think this was Matt's plan at all. I think this was his Hail Mary, basically saying, hey, I don't have another way of winning this, because if he had more time and actual evidence, he would have done that besides reveal his identity. But I also feel like he did this. If he outs the White Tiger's identity, the White Tiger cannot just go out and fight crime, which I think he's doing that to basically also show that, hey, maybe I don't need to be Daredevil, which is kind of a screwy move, but I understand why he did it. And the way he does this, it's not just like, hey, my next evidence is the fact that he's White Tiger. He was a hero. Do you prosecute an actual hero? I'm like, what the heck? I was not expecting the way he did it. I wasn't even expecting him to do it that way. But I'm not sure this is how the court works there. Now, I know some people are going to say, like, oh, but if you like this, why don't you like that in She-Hulk? The reason why that's a big difference is because here, it feels believable. It feels like actual court things that could happen, because in the episode, they show that the judge does not like this, does not like the fact that, hey, you undermined me. You basically said you weren't going to do this, but you did it anyway. And even the other guy was like saying, hey, he basically messed everything up. Oh, and I like the other guy too, the other lawyer that's, for the cops, because he is so slimily very good at his job too, at least the way I see it. And I'll explain that in a little bit later. But the reason why I don't like that in She-Hulk is because it just felt non-believable at all. Like, none of the court stuff felt like it could actually happen, or it felt like it could have, actually succeeded. That's why I don't like it in that. But I know there are different shows, and some of you are going to defend the She-Hulk as much as possible, but that's just my opinion. If you don't like it, that's fine. But I love what Matt does here. He basically goes to the heart of the jury instead of, like, evidence. Because at this point, he really can't do anything, and I found that smart. And Matt is a very charismatic guy, and I love that. Well, technically, there was evidence, and all the evidence was every time the White Tiger was saving people, was helping people, was doing stuff. And I like that a lot. And I loved the White Tiger's reasonings for this. They could have, like, over-explained it, but I love that all he was saying was, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? Because it's the right thing to do. Because it's the right thing to do. And I like that. I would like a little bit more explanation on why someone does something, but if that's all you need, that's great. That's awesome. And how I was saying, like, the cops, I was thinking that all the cops were bad. I like that it's not true. That it's not just all cops that are bad. And I like that nuance that, yeah, some cops are bad and, actively want to be horrible people and hurt people, while others actually appreciate the help of vigilantes and actually are good people. I like that even some cops were actually okay with the White Tiger, and I like how some were changing their minds. That was fantastic. But I also liked how the other lawyer was trying to also go into the heartstrings of the jury, but in the most sleazy way possible by explaining how a train accident would look or feel. And I'm like, oh God. And I legit thought that was going to work, because he also said that, yes, the White Tiger did so much good. Yes, he did so much to help people, but good people can do wrong things. Good people can make mistakes, and that is true. So I was like, okay, now it's 50-50, because now I don't know who's going to win. But this is the type of stuff I could not stop watching. I am so surprised that I was this invested in a court case about a superhero accidentally killing a cop and being tense about the cops themselves. And at this point, it's all a gamble. It's all on the juries themselves to see if the White Tiger is innocent or not. And because this is a courthouse episode, I was so tense, because I was worried if the White Tiger is going to get, free, that's great. But what's going to happen after? If he goes to prison, what's going to happen to him? So that was worrying. But at the end, it was such a relief hearing that the White Tiger was free. He was acquitted of all the charges, and you were like, oh my God, that was so stressful. I'm not joking when I say I was sweating and just kept my eyes on the screen. I was freaking out. And those are one of the few times where that's a good thing in this case. And that was so nice and sweet, right? The White Tiger is free. And again, if you notice, I've only been calling him the White Tiger. That's because I keep forgetting his name in the show. I am so sorry. But this was nice to see that, he was finally free. But that makes me wonder, if he's free, does that mean that he cannot be the White Tiger anymore, right? He shouldn't, because now they know his identity, right? So that was the whole point of him, wearing that in the first place. That makes me wonder if he even had a secret identity in the first place, really. Because Matt said in the last episode, if I could have found your suit, then the other judge, jury, whoever, are able to find this as well. And I'm like, how? Carrie found it because he went to the house and he saw the box. So how did anyone else figure that out, or anyone who was important? Because it seemed like Matt just revealed to the judge that, he was the White Tiger. So did the White Tiger not really have an identity? But that was nonetheless, he won in this case, and you're very happy. And before I go completely on what's going to happen, I wanted to mention Fisk. Him in this show, I'm going to be very honest, he still feels like Fisk normally, right? Like, he just feels like the Fisk we all know and love. But with his tension with Vanessa and how they're doing, it is so wild or weird in this case because you're like, okay, are they good? Are they not good? Like, what happened? Did Vanessa get more evil than Fisk? Because Fisk apparently is trying to do better, and Vanessa is still trying to, help out in her criminal empire or something like that. And it's really hard to tell if Fisk is actually trying to be good in his own way, or he's just playing everyone, and even playing his wife. Because the beginning of the episode, we saw some people kill some other people in a truck, apparently because of some gang affiliations, and Fisk basically says, just let them kill each other, while Vanessa is trying to say, no, let's keep the order. There was a point where some rival gang members, and apparently they're fighting, and then someone had come in, paying them basically to stop the war, which I found really interesting. And people keep calling this one guy a financial Wesley from the whole Daredevil season. And I'm like, oh, that was an interesting way of seeing it. So that's funny. And I had mentioned that the gang members had basically said, I don't work for anyone. I don't work for the mayor's lapdog. And the guy had said, oh, I don't work for the mayor. I work for the man. And I'm like, you're originally thinking Fisk, right? But could they mean Vanessa? Because it seems like Vanessa actually trying to keep the gangs in line while Fisk is just like, let them do whatever they want. And I'm like, okay, what is going on here? This is also very interesting. But another thing that's really interesting is the fact that, Fisk is very much against vigilantes. I wonder why. It's not like if you have, kicked your ass in a few cases, one literally almost blinded you, right? But it's really interesting seeing what he's planning to do because he brings in this reporter lady who I completely forgot to mention in the last episode is Ben Urich's niece. And I'm like, oh my God, that is fun. And the reason I'm even mentioning her in this episode and why I'm like pointing it out is because it seems like Fisk is trying to brainwash Ben Urich's niece into not liking vigilantes, not liking those heroes, even though Ben Urich basically worked with Daredevil. Maybe not him, but his friends. And maybe it's something smug for him, where he's just saying, hey, I killed your uncle, but you're on my side. And I just feel like that's gross. I find it interesting also because he seems like to try to want to get the news to influencers. I know a lot of people do not like that in shows, but the way it did it here, I barely even noticed that she was an influencer. But that's what she's doing. She's broadcasting everything online to the people. And I'm like, that is actually very smart. And very smart for Fisk using the internet to broadcast to a wider market than the Times or whoever's newspapers or whatever. Because not a lot of people read those anymore. And I found that really smart of him. But this leads me into the White Tiger. Because he's free now, right? You expect him to just live on, be himself, actually be able to actually be with his family. And he kind of is. Only problem is he just gets back to his old ways and puts on that suit to go and be the White Tiger again. And before I continue, this suit, I honestly like it so much because they took a very bland design from the comics for this version of the White Tiger, added some stripes, made it a little more textured, not over designed, but textured, give it a hood, make it look comfy, and it works so well. Because again, in the original version of the suit, it was just pure white. That is it. But in here, they made it look so cool. And we kind of got to see it literally when Matt was revealing that he was the White Tiger. But we see that, the White Tiger is ready to fight some crime. He hears someone in danger, so he's turned his head, and then someone shoots him. And I was so sad because I was like, oh, nothing bad anymore, right? Nothing bad's going to happen anymore because you're so happy he got away. But him being a superhero caused him to get killed by who? Well, it looks like it's the Punisher, but we know that is not the Punisher's MO. He does not kill heroes. He respects heroes. He just doesn't like criminals that escape, who are murderers, who do horrible things. And you can kind of guess that this guy who killed the White Tiger is part of those cops that, believe that the law does not apply to them and they can do whatever they want, that they idolize the Punisher. And I really hope they do what they do in the comics where the Punisher points out to those type of people that he hates them. I really hope they go in depth how they do it in this comic page. I really hope they do that because I feel like a lot of people who don't read the comics or don't understand it think that the Punisher likes these people, will endorse them. He does not like cops at all. He does not like people who endorse him. He believes, I've even explained this in the last episode, that the Punisher had put down his shield, put down his military background because it failed him. But he does not want anyone else to do what he does because to him, he just sees them as the problem as well, which they can be. And I really hope they point it out because, again, most people do not know that that's what the Punisher is like. They just see him as a cool guy with a skull and, kills people, right? But that's not who the Punisher is completely. And I really want Frank to put people in his place. And I really want to see that even though he's going to probably be in this show for a very short amount of time. But that was Daredevil, episode 3. Again, I miss this version of Daredevil. This feels like the Netflix Daredevil show. There was no real fighting. There was no real overusing CGI. Maybe there was some, but not enough to notice it. And the tension was something I missed. That was a big thing that I loved about the Netflix version. They made you so scared for literally everyone in the show. You have Matt trying to do his best to be a lawyer and trying to help this innocent man, but being flawed enough to do it in very shady ways, a place that he's not supposed to. And then the White Tiger basically being a man of honor about why he wants to be a hero, why he feels like it's his responsibility, basically doing the weight with power comes great responsibility, but with this guy. And I respect the actor so much, and I'm so sorry he passed away. I know he was battling cancer, and I hope he rests in peace. I appreciate him for this entire episode. And then with Kingpin, he is as slimy and as unsettling as usual. That's great. I wonder what he's going to do with, Ben Urich's niece. I think she calls herself BB. So is he going to use her, to make vigilantes look bad, right, with her platform? And what is Vanessa going to think about this? Will she know? Because Kingpin is not telling her anything. And I'm wondering if she's going to weaponize that. I know I didn't really mention Matt's girlfriend in here, but that's probably because she didn't really do much here. And I don't know how to feel about her, to be honest. She seems interesting. She also doesn't. It's just back and forth. Maybe I need more time with her. But what did you think? Did you like this episode? Did you not really like this episode? What do you think of court cases episodes with Daredevil? What do you think about, the fact that White Tiger had died by this imposter of a Punisher? And are you ready for the next episode? Was anyone else as surprised or interested of what was shown in this episode? Because now I got to talk about that. Let's talk about Daredevil, Born Again, episode 4. Now, again, I have said multiple times I was very worried about how the show was going to go. Of course, it was going to be very different than a Netflix show, or at least that's how I thought. But being 4 episodes in, you've gotten so used to how the show functions, how it's structured, that now you just feel comfortable with it, with the uneasiness. Because, again, these episodes are very uneasy. They just make you very cautious and very sad, as we show in the beginning of this episode. We've seen the aftermath of the White Tiger's death. We see that, they show off everything that he has. His mask, he has his amulet, and I hope they give it back to the family, because those do belong to his family. They do not belong to anyone else. Yes, technically the amulet is superpowered, so the government tends to take them, but I really hope they don't, because that is not theirs. And we probably will see the new White Tiger, because while Matt is talking to the coroner, even though the coroner is being kind of a dick because he doesn't even care about the body, which is sad. I feel like, yes, this is a dead body to you. I feel like you should still care. But then again, this is Hell's Kitchen in Daredevil, so there's that. But I love showing that, Daredevil is very not okay with this, that he does feel responsible. Not as much as I honestly thought he would be, but still responsible. And we get to see Angela Del Toro, which is the second White Tiger. Now, this is not the White Tiger that most of us probably knew from the Ultimate comics. That actually ends up being the younger sister of the White Tiger, of Hector. Finally, I got their names right. But we haven't seen her. We have seen his niece, which does become the second White Tiger. And I don't know if they're going to do anything with her yet, because again, she's a young kid right now. So I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe they may change it, or they may show off the sister being the second White Tiger first, and then Angela being the third one. I'm not sure. I don't know if they go by the same story as the comics. Probably not, because this is the MC now. But it's cool that we get a little nod to who will most likely be the second White Tiger, or third in this case. I'm not sure. And something that I haven't really mentioned throughout the show, but I feel like it's relevant now, is that we get all these murals in Hell's Kitchen of Fisk, Daredevil, the Punisher, and I just find that cool that it was just spread out through each individual episode, and you're like wondering who it is. And we know that because of all the leaks and who's going to show up in the show, that it was going to be Muse, a serial killer that uses actual human blood to make his art, which is gross. And the reason I wanted to talk about that is because he's actually in here, and we actually get to see what he looks like in this show. And he does look freaky and interesting. I'm surprised it took us 4 episodes in, but it's better late than never. And they haven't really showed too much of him, but I am curious what they're going to do with him. And there was this that I wasn't 100% sure if I should have mentioned, because it could have been a nothing, but I wanted to mention it because it really freaked me out. You know that one guy, I haven't really mentioned him, but he was basically like Fisk's right-hand man, or basically stuff. I don't know what he is, to be honest. But Fisk keeps him there for probably to be hip with the younger crowd. I'm not 100% sure, but we see him at a bar with these girls, and apparently Fisk is putting him in a very tight leash about the time he's supposed to be home or be in the office. And I'm like, how much of a tight hold does Fisk have on this guy? And does he have something on him? Is there something going on? Is the guy trying to seem like a father figure? What is it? And the reason I also wanted to talk about this is because when he was supposed to leave and he was supposed to go home, right? I was genuinely worried that him or the girls were going to get taken by Muse, because for the little bit of time we saw Muse, we see him take people, to use them in his art. So that's what I mean when I still really love all the tenseness that this show brings. Even when nothing happens, this show makes it really apparent that you're never safe no matter what you do. And I love that they give you that vibe, even with a simple thing of someone going home and how unsafe it is. And related to Fisk, I personally like the fact that he's technically getting therapy with Vanessa about the marrow problems, since Vanessa basically cheated and, Fisk, kind of was away for a long time because of his eyes. And I love that Kristen, Matt's girlfriend, is a therapist. I was honestly worried that she was just going to be Fisk's hostage or basically manipulate her to be against Vanessa, because Fisk is a manipulative ass. We know that, right? And I find it funny seeing Fisk trying to actually work out with his marriage, and it's just funny to me. But it makes me very worried for Kristen anytime they're there, because one, it's Fisk. Vanessa's no saint either. But I do like this one thing where at the end of their session, Kristen asks Vanessa if Fisk is hurting her, which is ironic because Fisk will hurt anyone else, but he will not put his hands on his wife. So that's good. But I love that Kristen, actually asks about that because she thinks that Fisk is, hurting some people. And, that's obviously the case, but I just find that hilarious. And something that I find really interesting is that Matt's doing his job in this show. Like, even though he failed with Hector, I mean, he still technically won, but he failed in keeping him alive. He is still doing pro bono work and helping other people with people who can't, afford really big lawyers like him. And one thing I really like is about who he decides to represent. I don't know this guy that they introduced. I think he's new for the show. He could be someone important from the comics. If you know, please let me know. I would be very interested. But I really like what they're talking about here, because this guy was, arrested because he was stealing food. And you're like, oh yeah, he's just like one of those bad people because he has all these priors. He has all these times he was in prison. And you don't really think about it until he talks with Matt, because Matt is trying to basically say, hey, have a deal. 20 days, 30 days, you only need to be there in jail. And then he offers him like a 10-day deal in jail, which honestly, if you think about it, would be really good if you're like in that case. But I love what the guy did for Matt, which opened Matt's eyes, ironically. Because yes, Matt went through a lot of hardship in his life, and it probably wasn't as good, especially being blind. And yes, I know he has superpowers that allow him to basically be a normal person without his eyes, but he still rose up to, have money. He rose up to have a successful law firm. And one thing I really like is they show the poverty of our world. They go really deep into it because this guy explains that he does not want to do this. He does not want to be in these bad situations. Yes, he's made mistakes, and that's on him. But I love that they show that, hey, because I had all these priors and I was in jail, I couldn't, pay my rent, or I couldn't do what I need to do. And then he just becomes more homeless, and then he can't pay for stuff. And then he's going in the trash to try to eat, and he stole food because he needed that. And I'm like, oh my God, they really go into the heart of the problem. So I'm wondering, what will Matt do for this guy, or how will he get him, to just get out? Because Matt still has to go through the law normally, right? That's Matt's thing. He wants to do everything by the book, at least at this point in time. But this specific part, I don't know why, it really spoke to me, because we don't really see a lot of this in comic book stuff, especially in the MCU. It's always about the big things, superheroes fighting the big bad, but not like someone trying to help someone who's down on his luck. I miss that so much. And going back to Fisk, I find it cool that he's, actually trying to do the mayoral things, not just use that as a front. He's actually trying to do change. Like, he's trying to change the docks, the place that there was a lot of shootings out, and doing his mayoral thing. The funny thing, though, is that because he's usually, the boss of everything, because he's doing crime and all stuff, he does not know how to be the mayor at all, which I think is, kind of going into our real world stuff a little too much at this point. Which is funny, because this show came out way before our current climate, but it really relates so much. But he says he does not have time for red tape. He does not want to have to go through proper channels to, do the change he needs to do. But I like that everyone else is trying to rein him down, but I feel like that's like very scary, because this is the Kingpin. You do not want to mess with him. You do not want to say no to him, but like, can he risk anything? Because, he's in this mayoral position, but what would happen if they found out what he's done by doing something illegal? I'm not sure. But this also gets into something that I also find really interesting, because his advisor, whoever he is, I don't know his name, is young and is, basically the guy to make Fisk look good to the younger crowd. Yeah, but apparently he makes a mistake and makes Fisk look bad. And I like this because it shows that Fisk still has cracks in his shell, showing that he does not have patience for anyone, no matter who you are. And that is cool, because we get to see the Fisk that we've known before. He's angry. He's pissed off. He has no patience for anyone. And you're terrified, because when the young guy basically, says what he's done, basically tries to take up ownership, I was genuinely under the impression that Fisk was going to kill him, because again, Fisk does not play. So the fact that he didn't fire him, I was interested. So what is his goal with this kid? Does he want him to be a successor? Does he actually see him as a son now? I am genuinely interested. And then there's this other woman who I think is actually Fisk's advisor. I don't know how the mayoral system works. I don't know who's under him. I don't know how that works. But she's basically, actually showing all the appointments, putting him in different places to be a mayor, basically, right? And I think she has ulterior motives because she does say at this point, I was here before Fisk and, the kid, and I will be here after. Is there a reason why she said that? Does she want to do something more? I don't know. Now, back to Matt. We see him, trying to find the bullet that shot Hector. And I really like what they did here because they kind of use that new zoom in effect for him to show where he could find it. And I love that he's smart about it. He throws a bottle, where's it landing, and it goes into a drain and he finds it. And I love that that he's blind because he's not looking anywhere. And I think that's where Charlie Cox is really good in the role. I do want to say I do kind of feel bad for him that he does this role because there have been cases where he says he doesn't look people in the eyes, mainly because of his role playing a blind man for so long and he's kind of been typecasted. I'm glad he has work as Daredevil again, but he finds the bullet and he notices it has a skull on it. So you know where he goes? He goes to the Punisher, Frank Castle's hideout. Now, I'm going to be very honest. I have not watched the Punisher show after season 1, so I don't know what happened. So if anyone can tell me, I'd be really much appreciated. But he goes to Frank's hideout. I don't know what Matt was doing there. I think he just wanted to show Frank that there are people using his skull, which does get me into a little thing that I want to talk about real quick. Because it shows that the Punisher does not care or doesn't have any motives to do anything. That I'm kind of worried about that because I heard that there wasn't really much of the actor in this show. And I feel like that's a waste of using him if this is the only appearance, because then it wouldn't be showing that, Punisher hates these cops, hates that they're using his symbol. I don't know if the Punisher's going to have more scenes, but I hope he does something. And then it leads me into another thing that I also really love, which I find really cool. And it really shows the chops of these two actors and how comfortable they've been with each other. Because Frank basically tries to point out Matt's anger and frustration because he's really a good therapist to him, because he basically points out that everything Matt does now is because of Foggy, even though Matt tried to avoid it every time he talked about it. And I was like, okay, and I'm more interested, I'm interested. And Frank just keeps grinding him, and all that stuff. I still love the spat that Frank believes that people should die if they've done bad things, while Matt is also still trying to get him to be alive. And I love that Frank kind of points out the flaw in Matt's logic, I guess, because he points out that Poindexter Bullseye got to live while Foggy basically had to die. And I find that conversation was really heartfelt. Made me almost cry. I really hope we get to see more of the actor of Punisher. I'm sorry, I forgot the actor's name. And I hope he does something about the cops using his symbol. Because I don't know if I just feel comfortable with Daredevil just being the only one confronting them. But it's just my opinions. What do you think? But after that, I do feel like we're getting back into more familiar territory because it shows Fisk talking with Vanessa, talking about how they're changed, how they're doing better, and it parallels with Matt, being with Christine. They are in love. They really care about each other. It shows that they both have what they wanted now, both normal lives. Fisk got to be mayor. He is getting his relationship with Vanessa kind of better, I think. And Matt is learning to let someone in again and, love her and, be normal. But one thing I really love about this ending is it shows that we're going back to the status quo, kind of showing Matt, yes, he's happy. Yes, he's enjoying life. But we see that he cannot just be normal because he goes to, I guess, a basement. I guess he's like Batman now because he has his own little compartment where he has all his different masks, which, Matt, where did you get that? And who made the helmets? Because I remember the guy that made all your suits is in prison. So let me wonder where you got these. It's cool to see them, but now I'm just thinking you're Batman. Daredevil's Batman at this point. He's rich. He has a very expensive home. He has gadgets, and he has a bunch of suits or a bunch of helmets at this point. But this is really interesting to see because then on the flip side, we see Fisk going somewhere very stingy to eat a bunch of food, which I find funny because he's apparently supposed to be on a diet. And we see him eat all this ginormous food, I guess, to show that he's going back to his old ways, even though he's supposed to be, much healthier. And we transfer it back with Matt going and using his billy clubs back like a weapon again and using them in such ferocity. And I'm like, Matt just wants to be Daredevil again. He wants to be free. And you're just so excited. You really want him to be back. And that makes me wonder if he's going to do that in the next episode. And I really want him to be back. And I want to see if he changes his suit. I want to see if he will maybe finally have the double D's on his chest. I know that may not happen because apparently this Daredevil just doesn't have a logo for some reason. Is it because he's blind? I don't know. But on the flip side, it's weird seeing Fisk eat food in a really stingy place just probably to hide his hunger at home, I guess, with Vanessa, which I find so stupid. But one thing that I knew was going to happen was that he had Adam there, the guy that Vanessa was having an affair with, which of course he was. See, we saw Fisk with bloody knuckles, and we were just wondering, did he kill Adam? And I was thinking he did it because yes, he promised Vanessa to keep him alive, to not kill him. So technically, he's telling the truth, and he's doing that while keeping Adam in a cage, basically starving him while eating in front of him, which I think is a big fu to him. And I find that so interesting. Like, is this going to lead into something? Is this going to lead into him snapping? Because Fisk seems to already get annoyed with him being mayor, and he seems to be getting a lot of outbursts now. And that makes me wonder if Matt is going to go back on his rule of just being a lawyer and actually want to be Daredevil, because he looked like he had so much fun using his billy club and looking at his helmets. What do you think? Do you think that's going to happen? Do you think they're going to go back to their old ways? And if you do, how do you think that's going to happen? Because I am not 100% sure. Is there going to be a reason for Matt to be Daredevil again? Or was it just the talk with Punisher for him to be himself? I'm very curious. Do you think that Wilson Fisk is going to go back to his old ways? Does Vanessa know that he has Adam caged up basically like an animal while eating in front of him? Does she know? Because she knows that he's hiding stuff from her, and I'm wondering if that's going to do anything. But those are just my thoughts on Daredevil Born Again Episode 4. What did you think? Did you like this episode? Did you not? I would really like to know your opinions. I got really interested that we finally got to see Angela, the second White Tiger. We got to see Matt and Fisk going back to their old ways. And I'm interested, what is the deal with this one guy that Matt is helping out? Will he help him, or is he going to die? I'm very curious. What is Fisk going to do to Adam? I have so many questions. Do you got questions? And if you do, leave them in the comments down below. Okay. If this is how the MCU continues being, I'm going to start having more expectations on it. And today, I'll talk about Daredevil Born Again, episode 5 and 6. Now, I don't know why they introduced episodes back to back, because I do feel like they can work separately on each week. But I don't think I can complain having more Daredevil, right? The only thing is that now the show will end much sooner. And the reason why I think that these episodes could have worked separately is because this entire 5th episode is literally a bank heist one. So it's very classic superhero, but with the grittiness of Daredevil. And I feel like this episode is a good example of expanding a superhero world without overblowing that. And do you know why I say that? Because in this episode, we get Matt talking about getting a loan for his company with McDuffie and Murdoch, right? To expand it, make it more global, I guess. And the person he talks to ask for the loan is Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel's dad. And I love their little chemistry here. They don't change Kamala's dad at all. He still feels like the same character in Miss Marvel. But even if you haven't watched the show, which I did watch it, they made it easy to understand. You understand that he's Kamala Khan's dad. You understand that he knows that she is most likely Miss Marvel, and that he lives in Jersey City, and then that Matt, appreciates the city, and I really like that. They don't overcomplicate it. There's no extra stuff. It's just another person who lives in this world who happens to know another superhero. And I love that, because still in line with the Daredevil here, because this is a heist episode with Daredevil, it still has a little campiness with the thieves that come in later having multicolored masks, and you get to play into Matt's, comedic side, because during this episode of, him trying to get that loan from Kamala's dad, he can't get it because, he is too good. He does do charity work, allow to do pro bono work, even though he has a big company. And he explained that to Kamala's dad, and I love that even though he says no, he still understands it, and I love that. But when Matt leaves, criminals come in, and Matt overhears it with his, super hearing, and he asks Kristen to call the police. So they come in much earlier than they're supposed to. That's good. But also, Matt decides to go back. The only thing I found really strange about this is that, what was his plan? He's not Daredevil at this part. I thought he was going to put on his costume, but, he's still actively avoiding to be Daredevil. So I don't know why Matt was, putting himself in harm's way. Maybe it's because he didn't want to, see his new friend hurt, which I like that we got that little emotional connection now, so that's nice. But again, we also get to see Matt's comedic side with the robbers, because he plays stupid. He plays blind because, technically he is. Because of his blindness, he acts dumb with the robbers. He says, what's going on here? What's going on? I don't know. And then, it's, are you stupid? It's like, I'm blind. And, and he just acts very smug with them. And I just find that so fun and funny. And you know how I was talking about these robbers with multicolored masks? Well, I'm not sure if this was intentional, but one of them has a very green mask with a giant shotgun. Now, it could just be me overanalyzing it, but this guy reminds me so much of a Spider-Man villain called the Sin Eater, who was a serial killer who killed Jean the Wolf. She was a cop that was friends with Spider-Man. Now, I'm not sure if that's what they're alluding here, because all the other criminals are also wearing multicolored masks, which we'll see kind of becomes important. Or is that just me overthinking? Because the one guy is wearing a green mask, very identical to the one in the comics, with a shotgun. Yes, he's not wearing his purple shirt and everything like that, but it's close enough. But what do you think? Do you think that's alluding to that? I don't know. And I'd really like to know your opinion on that. And yes, I know that this episode takes place in St. Patrick's Day, so maybe that's why he's wearing that, and they're all Irish. I don't know. It's just a nice thing that I thought of. But it looks like that these robbers are actually looking for something, so they need the vault. But it looks like these criminals are trying to negotiate with the cops because they seem to get there much sooner than they were supposed to, which, thank you, Matt, and thank you, Kristen. Nice. But they need to have some hostage release, right, to make sure they get what they want as well. Which I love that Matt does everything he can to allow the wife to have her husband there with her to be released. And I love that Matt will do good, even in very small ways. So maybe that's why he was there, to minimize any damage, which, you know what, is actually pretty smart for Matt. But it looks like the criminals are looking for something. And so they basically make Kamal's dad help them, because he's technically the assistant manager of the bank, because I guess the manager is not there for some reason. But they take him. Matt basically told him to stall as much as possible. Matt, does some funny, again, comic booky story of like, hey, I need to go to the bathroom. And I think it's just me because I've seen so many superhero stuff. When he said, I need to go to the bathroom, that's always code for costume time, for superhero time. And that kind of happens when one of the criminals basically, takes him to the bathroom, and then Matt goes all daredevil mode and starts kicking this guy's ass. And one thing I noticed, I'm not sure if this was intentional, if they left out any music here because he's trying to be quiet. This could be the choice, I'm just not sure. But it does go into the daredevil format of fighting that it's not easy. It is very hard to keep someone down and to be quiet because he holds on to a shotgun to make sure it doesn't make noise. And I really like that. And I like that Matt goes to help his new friend and utilizes his heightened hearing to, go into the bank vault, because I guess the criminals needed that for something. And even now, I still don't understand what that thing was. I guess a diamond. But one thing I found really funny here was that they're doing nod to Spider-Man No Way Home, where Kamal's dad basically, what kind of lawyer are you? And Matt goes, a good one, which I love that so much, just alluding to other films while not overdoing it. That was very nice to see. And the reason why Matt even helped him in the first place to even open it is to cause less harm. But he goes up to basically show that he has it to the other criminal, and he basically says that he'll give it to him if he releases people, but of course the criminal's not doing that, so he tosses it. And on the side, it looks like there was these cops, surrounding the place, right? Like I said, and it felt like a ticking time bomb, saying like, okay, how long can we do this? How long can they, be there? And it seemed like Matt knew that, because when he tossed the bag, the police threw a smoke bomb into the bank, to cause a distraction. And I love that Matt used that to his advantage. Because of the smoke bomb, the criminal decides to disguise him, take off his mask, has a police uniform underneath. That's another reason why I was thinking that this guy was a Sin Eater, because in the comics, the Sin Eater, like I said, was a serial killer that had killed Jean the Wolf, which was his partner. So that's where my mind was, that this is the Sin Eater. But again, I could be wrong. But while everyone's getting evacuated, Matt goes, he feels responsible, so he follows that guy because Matt doesn't need to see anyone. So he goes to him, he tracks him down, he puts on a red mask that he took from one of the criminals. And of course, it's red, so that's fitting. And he just beats this guy up so badly. And it's brutal. It is not subtle at all. He breaks the guy's legs. And I'm like, dang. But it doesn't look like he was alone. That guy was alone, because he tossed the bag of the jewel to this lady who was a hostage. So there was an inside man, and she decided to open it. And it turned out to be one of the candies that Kamal's dad had in his desk that, I guess Matt, switched out, which of course he did. He's a smart guy. But I'm wondering what's going to be her deal, because we don't see her in the next episode. But I love that, this entire thing with Matt, this is just getting him closer to wanting to be Daredevil. He put on a mask, he fought a bad guy, and he seemed back. And that got me very excited. But this episode does not end with, that just brutality. It actually ends in a very nice note, because we see Matt check on Kamal's dad to make sure he's doing okay. And I like the little banter because, Kamal's dad offers him to help him out, help him, expand his law firm. And I love that. I love the little friendship they start getting here. And it feels very natural. And I feel like this is how you grow a universe. You don't outright say that, oh, this is going to allude to the next episode, or this is going to mean something later on. This is just a little like, hey, they're just gonna hang out and have a very nice meal. And I love that this is how it ends. And that gets me very excited for the next episode. Now, this episode is like the beginning of the Titans coming back, of Matt becoming Daredevil, and Wilson Fisk becoming Kingpin again. But before I get into that specifics, I should have mentioned this a while ago, and I don't know why I didn't mention it. But I really love that each individual episode contains these little like interviews of people in the city from BB herself, doing these like interview things of just recording them. And I find these little things very nice. It feels like you're getting more connected into Hell's Kitchen, getting connected into New York. And you get to see what people are thinking, what they think about superheroes, what they think about the world. And I like this little thing here of this one guy basically saying that he saw a guy and called him swordsman. Now, they may just seem like a nobody character or nothing thing, like, someone's fighting with a sword, being a vigilante, right? He's inspired. But they do later on in this episode show the character who has that moniker, who actually is a superhero in the comics, who is Hawkeye's mentor, who teaches him everything he needs to know and everything he learns. But in this universe, he's kind of like the stepfather of Kate Bishop, the second Hawkeye. So technically that mentor relationship could still be there. But I like that it looks like he's actually doing more now. He's actually deciding to want to be a hero. He's actually fighting some people with a sword. Now, he's not wearing any like purple or anything, but it's nice seeing him here, and it's nice seeing him later on, which I will talk about in a little bit. But I like these little reports. And then later we see more of Muse's stuff. We see his dead bodies being placed in random places, so that's interesting. And you know how I was saying that this episode is bringing Matt and Fisk back to their old ways? Well, it kind of shows it in very slight ways in the beginning, because they show Matt praying. We have not seen Matt pray a lot in this show. We've seen him, avoid the church, barely do anything religious. But in here, you can see him praying. And on the flip side, we see Fisk getting a visit by one of the, I think these are the Tracksuit Mafia, and they're talking. He basically threatens Fisk, and I'm going to be very honest. When they were talking, I was expecting for Fisk to lose it and to annihilate this man. And I'm like, are you really going to destroy the mayor's seat? And I was really expecting that, but no. Fisk was just very calm about it, which is very freaky when he does that. So there's the uneasiness I was kind of missing. But back to Matt's stuff. I'm honestly really surprised from Kristen, because she's writing a book, right? And it looks like she wants to write it on vigilantes, and she wants to talk to Matt about bringing in like Frank Castle and Daredevil. And don't people know that Punisher is hiding? So how would Matt know where he is? Because Kristen basically asked, "Don't you know Punisher? Can't you let me talk to him?" Like, where would he find him? Yes, basically, Matt does know where he is. But as a normal person, he would not know where he was. So I don't know what that was about. When was Matt indirectly helping Daredevil himself? That is very interesting. Did that happen somewhere in the past few years where we didn't know what was going on with Matt? Because that would be very interesting. And is he even going to do that? Is he going to talk to her in his Daredevil getup about his vigilante-ness? I just find that weird, because Matt never does an actual voice. So how would that work? And it seems like everyone's knowing what Muse is doing, because when Matt is at work, talking with McDuffie, doing their loyal things, Angela comes back wanting to talk to Matt. And I'm going to be very honest, I was not expecting her to come back at all. I thought the last episode was going to be her first and only real appearance. But I guess there's going to be more of her, at least I think, and I hope. And you can tell that this entire talk with Matt is making the cog in Matt's mind going on being Daredevil, because Angela basically points out that she knows that people are missing, and it's probably the cause of the White Tiger's death, of Hector's death. And, Matt's trying to really do the whole, no, maybe she talks to the police, maybe do something else. Why are you telling me? Which a part of me feels like Angela knows that Matt is Daredevil at some point. The only reason I say that is because, why would you tell someone like that? He is technically just a lawyer. So what would he have to do with that? And you can tell that Cherry is basically also trying to tell Matt, let it go, let the police handle it. But I love that the reason why he doesn't let the police handle it is because of Hector, because they did kill him. So I totally understand why Matt would now specifically want to go back into being a superhero. And when Angela left Matt's office, I was genuinely under the impression she was going to wear the amulet, because in the comics she is the White Tiger. Yes, she's young, but Spider-Man's young. He has superpowers, so why didn't he do it? So I was genuinely like, maybe she's gonna wear the amulet and become the next White Tiger. I thought that, but later I was proven wrong. But it also, like, Fisk knows that Muse exists, and the reason he knows that is because the murals that Muse makes are all out of blood, which, yes, I already knew that, and I knew that was kind of his whole thing. But I like how, basically, the Kingpin found it funny. But it seems like this is helping Fisk's anti-vigilante stance, because he decides to make an entire task force about it. And we later see he's very serious about it. And he looks like he's having so much fun doing that. Probably because he wants them to, hunt down Daredevil. But I find it really interesting that it specifically says they don't need a body cam. They're going to have more armory. They have more leniency on the law. And that's already scary, as police already have a lot of lenience on the law. So that makes me wonder if the Punisher will actually showing up and get them, because they will be wearing Punisher's logo. So will he do anything? I really hope so. I hope that last scene was not the only time he was there. But even though Fisk was very in his element about recruiting armed cops, basically, he seems very inequipped to talk to people at a gala, talking about why he's, putting a lot of money into the dogs, why he's doing that. And I love that people were pushing holes in his story and pushing holes into why he would actually do that. And I love that people are calling him selfish like that. And again, because this is Fisk, I was thinking he was going to rip their head a new one. But again, seeing him very calm, it is more freaky in this season because we have seen what Fisk is capable of. So seeing him just be taking the hits from these people, it is very unsettling. And it looks like Vanessa's back to back him up again, so I guess they're doing better. I'm not sure, since she's also a monster too. But someone who was at the gala that I found actually very important was the swordsman. He was there. He was talking to Fisk, basically kind of quote-unquote threatening him. So it does look like he's actually there to actually be a vigilante and help out. We saw a little clip of him fighting some people with his sword, so that is cool. Is he gonna actually put on his suit and actually fight crime? Or is he just gonna be, a regular guy with a sword? I'm really curious. Yes, I know this season is supposed to be a little more grounded, again, like the normal Daredevil show, but it does have Matt, with his Daredevil suit. So I really hope they give the swordsman an actual, comic booky suit while also keeping it modern. But since I think because of that threat, Fisk goes to talk to the people he's recruiting to do that anti-vigilante task force, and he basically tells them they're doing good, they're not doing anything bad, that what they're actually doing is actually a public service, and sometimes they need to get more in people's faces and do whatever they need to do, which is horrifying, which is something you're not supposed to do. But Fisk is loving everything. He is making all these people feel important, and he gives them all vests that we do not see the fronts of, which I think are either already have the logo or they're going to put it on, because we have seen multiple set leaks of a cop with the Punisher logo. So there's that. But it is cool seeing Fisk, be a leader, but only in the worst setting with these cops. And how I was talking about Angela a little bit ago, how she could be the next White Tiger? Well, I thought this was going to happen in this specific part. She is looking for answers about, her uncle. And she goes into the subway system where Muse is usually shown. Now, in my mind, I thought she was bringing her amulet. I thought that would be much safer, because it gives you strength. So I don't know why she is going by herself. She is a kid going by herself. But I like that it shows that kids will do what they want at a lot of times. But again, I think it would have been better if she at least brought the amulet. Even if it wasn't going to do anything, at least it would have, made her feel much smarter. But that's just me. And it looks like Matt gets word that she is missing. Angela's mom calls Matt, basically asking where she is. And Matt, I was genuinely oh yeah, he's going to suit up. He's going to go over there. But I was almost disappointed because he was going to call the cops to basically just be a civil servant and call the police, tell them that someone's in danger, tell them where, right? But I love that, no, he basically just says,
fuck it.
And goes and is ready to suit up and does. We get to see him in his Daredevil suit again. We see him with the higher budget having the CGI. Again, it is still really weird to see, so I'm not 100% used to it. But it is still nice that we get that. We get Daredevil back. And I'm going to be very honest. Why did it take us 6 episodes for Matt to have his suit back? Yes, we saw him in episode 1, so technically that's 5 episodes. But even then, why did it take so long for him to be Daredevil again? Why is that a big thing in Daredevil media where it takes him every season to go from wanting to be Daredevil to not wanting to be Daredevil to being Daredevil and then not wanting to be Daredevil? What is with that? Is that a big thing? Because I really want him to just be Daredevil. But I love that it kind of has a parallel with Fisk, because we see Fisk also feel like he's getting corrupted again, being his old Kingpin ways. And we see that because when Matt finds Angela, who was taken by Muse, no surprise there, was being drained by her blood, Matt goes immediately to fight Muse, being angry, being furious. And on the flip side, we see Fisk go to Adam, because of course it's in the little bunker that he has him in, and basically gives him an out by giving him axe, basically saying how he had a hammer that killed his father, basically seeing if Adam will be able to overpower him. And again, and on the flip side, we see Matt kicking the ass of Muse, which is cool. Now, when I was watching this, I was like, why doesn't he just take out the needle in Angela's body? Now, when I really thought about it, it's because the blood would just leak out while, he is busy fighting Muse. So that's cool. And you see Matt lose it, which again goes on the flip side when Fisk goes into an animalistic rage, because when Adam is trying to kill him, Fisk just takes advantage of it. And this actually gets me something, because in here, we see the brutality, we see the anger in Fisk, and this is what I miss. This Fisk feels strong and powerful, and probably not human, because this is in the MCU, and we have seen him do very impossible things. But the reason why I feel this work is because it feels real to the Fisk we first saw, and to the Fisk that we were getting to know with super strength. Because he flies him up, he throws him with such ferocity, and it breaks bricks. And it feels like he actually has strength. While the ones in Hawkeye and Echo felt very cartoony. So it's really nice that this find a balance. But it looks like he killed Adam, which, who was not expecting that? This is the Kingpin, for Christ's sake. And I can say Kingpin because it looks like he's back. And just like Daredevil, because he saves Angela, but Muse got away. I love that he's back because Angela asks, is that you, Daredevil? And I love that. But again, Mask, you better hide your voice because you sound way too much like yourself. Your voice is very recognizable. At least in the older seasons, your voice sounded more raspy. Oh my god, this episode was so cool. What did you think? Did you like this episode? Did you like how we're getting back to Matt and Fisk getting back to their natures? Daredevil versus Kingpin. And what did you think about everything that happened in this episode? Because I thought it was interesting. But that's my thoughts on episode 5 and 6 of Daredevil Born Again. Now, I know I had more things to say about episode 6, but that's probably because they had a lot more in the episode, a lot more juice, a lot more things going on, while in episode 5, it was really a heist. So it's a lot less things to really talk about, or things that I didn't really have to really go into detail like I did in episode 6, because again, there was a lot more things and a lot more things to talk about. But what did you think about both episodes? Did you like them? Did you not like them? I'd really like to know. Do you also agree with me not really liking that Matt has to stop being Daredevil and being Daredevil again over and over? Or do you not mind that trope of Daredevil? What do you think of Fisk getting back to his old ways? What do you think about this being a good way of introducing more characters in the MCU, or just showing that they exist? Because I personally love that. What do you think? These two titans are back to their old ways, and that gets me very excited for what comes next. And today, I'll talk about Daredevil Born Again, episode 7. Now, I am still so surprised on how much I'm enjoying this show. No matter how long it's going, there hasn't been an episode that I have not liked. Each one fits so well. I haven't been bored. I haven't been, tired of it. I'm just more interested. Even to ones where basically it was just a heist episode, that was still very exciting. And this one is more plot heavy, and it's still very exciting and kind of funny. Because when we go into the episode, we immediately get to Fisk, talking about the city with his guys, his right-hand men, I guess, and explaining, oh, I love the city. I love it. We need to protect it so much. And, he's obviously trying to take the credit, and we know that's Fisk's thing. And I love that he thinks he has power. But then when one of them mentions that Daredevil was there and that he saved Angela, you could tell Fisk was annoyed and freaked out. He was not expecting him to be back. He seems genuinely scared, and it's so funny, to be honest. And on the flip side, we see that Angela and Matt are basically having the same thought, or at least that's how they portray it, of their encounter of Angela, knowing that Daredevil's there, while Matt is living his experience of being Daredevil again. And it's funny because he's in the shower washing the blood away from what happened to him. And then Kristen comes in, which, all right. And obviously she notices that he had damage on him, that he actually got hurt. But literally, all Matt had to do to not make her really think about it too much was just get into their sexy time. Matt just had to wrist her up so hard that she just forgot what she was going to ask about, his injuries. I know that was cringy, what I just said. But obviously, that wasn't going to last, because when they were out of the shower and they actually changed, she still tries to ask him, why is he hurt? Why did he leave their apartment? And I love that she actually asked these questions. I love that people are not stupid here. And I love that Matt still uses his, blind excuse of saying, I tripped, I do this, I do that. But it doesn't seem to completely work, because Kristen is still pushing, because she talks about Foggy. But it also looks like she's kind of a little jealous of, Karen, which I'm very surprised with, because Matt didn't really talk about her, at least from what we know. So what would Kristen have to be jealous about? So that was interesting. But I also like the little thing for Matt to basically see Kristen, touching her face and all this stuff. That's always a nice thing to see for Matt, the player. But Kristen is not the only one who was worried about Matt, because obviously Cherry was also very worried and was ready to scold Matt for what happened. I do like that Cherry is sticking with what he wants. He does not want Matt to be hurt, and he does not want to be there for Matt to be hurt. But I also found it interesting that Matt, I think because he was thinking like how he was with Buggy and Karen, basically saying, hey, do this, and do that, even though he basically broke Cherry's trust. And I love that, again, Cherry was like, no, you do it yourself. You lost my trust right now. And I found that cool. But then we're going back to Fisk and how he's dealing with the whole information about basically his sworn enemy is back. And one thing I found really funny here is how he talks about basically his criminal empire with his, right-hand man, basically, who also is a criminal, I'm pretty sure, because he basically talks as if everything he did was legal. Everything he did was good. Everything he did was to save the city. Even though we know in the end of the first season, he basically accepted his fate as a bad guy. So it's funny how he talks about it. And I love how he basically talks about all his employees who he's worked with as blue-collar millionaires. And that sounded so ridiculous and so Kingpin. But I love that he blames Daredevil for his incarceration because he says, I was unlawfully detained, I was unlawfully arrested, I lost all my work. And I'm like, Kingpin, you sound like a small child talking about this. And I just found that hilarious. And I also found it hilarious is that he basically said what a lot of people think of Batman does to his villains. Because he basically said, he broke my workers' spirits, he broke their bones with no due process, he just hurt them. And I'm like, that sounds like every commenter who thinks Batman fighting muggers and actual criminals and supervillains like they were just regular people and just mentally ill all the time, which I don't know if that was intentional, but if it is, that is funny, and I like that it's pointing out the absurdity here, because the people Daredevil does fight are bad people. Let's not get it twisted, especially for Batman too. Now, skipping over my little tangent there, we get to see Angela's recovery, from Muse basically taking all her blood away, which, how would that feel exactly? I'm very curious about that. But we basically see her talk with Matt and her basically feeling like no one's going to help, especially not the cops. And we know that's going to be true. But I love that Matt is ready to reassure her, also letting us know that he is not going to be done being Daredevil anytime soon. And again, I really hope he's not going to give up his suit by the end of the season. That would be stupid. But then after this, we get confirmation that Vanessa is working behind Fisk's back, because that whole situation we saw with Fisk's guy talking to the gang leaders individually, saying they have to pay $1 million or something like that. I'm sorry, 1.8 million or something like that. And by the way that he said, I don't work for the mayor, I work for the man, I was already under the impression that he was talking about Vanessa, and it's just confirmed here that it was her, because she tells the tracksuit guy that he did it. But I also am interested on the fact on why this tracksuit guy is very rebellious here. He did seem like he liked Vanessa's rule. So what's going on here? That's something I'm really interested in. And we'll see what kind of happens to him later in this episode. Oh, and okay. This part of the video is going to be a little bit back and forth because there's a lot of things happening here. We get Kristen with her client, Bastion, who we find out is a muse, which is kind of obvious by the way he talks and the way his mannerisms are. So that's interesting. We learn that he did Taekwondo, which is why he was able to square up with Daredevil. But even then, how though? Because Taekwondo is one martial arts. Daredevil has been fighting in multiple martial arts, not just one. It wasn't just boxing. There was multiple fighting styles he used. So I'm surprised by the struggle that he had, to be honest. But we get to learn that, and on the flip side, we get to see that Fisk finds out who Bastion is with that one cop from the beginning of the episode, the one that also helped with the escalation with the robbers. So that's interesting. There's a lot of back and forth with that, and it's so cool seeing how tense it is for Kristen to find out that Bastion is Muse. And I find it interesting that Bastion could just paint his own mask because it's pretty simple. It's just basically 2 lines across eyes. But of course, he did it with his own blood. So of course, Kristen would find out. And Bastion is ungodly uncomfortable here and goes so well into the atmosphere here of the scene. But one thing that I found actually really interesting was the fact that Muse didn't get his idea to wear the mask because of Daredevil. He got it because of Kristen's book, because of what wearing a mask really represents. And that's actually pretty interesting, which will lead me into something in a little bit. But we also see the outside of this entire situation that McDuffie is figuring out that Matt and Cherry have this secret thing going on the side, and that she's starting to feel left out and starting to feel betrayed. And I'm like, is there a betrayal bug going all over here? Because I'm wondering what's going to happen with her. Is she going to know? Is she going to die? I don't know. What do you think? But then we see Fisk put his task force, anti-vigilante task force, together. And to be honest, what they showed here in this episode, I legit thought the team were going to be a lot more prominent in this episode, but we see they really weren't, to be honest. Maybe it's for the next episode, but I was kind of disappointed, to be honest. But then when we get back with Kristen and Bastion, we already see that Bastion ditched his normal outfit because he basically held Kristen hostage and put on his new suit and was going insane. He was just creepy. He was scary, and that is very exciting. And especially goes so well into the tension that I said multiple times I really love about this show. And it is so freaky because Muse was ready to have his own art piece in the therapy room. Like, he had cut Kristen's arm, and you saw everything. I'm not even sure if I'm gonna even be able to show that here, and I don't even get monetized. But he it's slow. It's not like, it's like a little cut. No, he goes down the entire arm, and you see it, and I'm like, oh no. And it was horrifying. And you saw Muse, he was ready to use Kristen's blood to make his own art piece. But this is what I found cool. I was like, is anyone gonna help? But then Daredevil comes through the window to fight Muse. Now, I wasn't expecting him to actually get through because I was like, how does he know that Muse was there? Did he put some clues that I didn't know? Because I couldn't even figure it out. Maybe I didn't see the episode correctly because I couldn't see how he got to that conclusion. Because I was like, who is going to save her? Who's going to save Kristen? I thought it was going to be the task force. Whoops, I was a little wrong. Turns out there was actually multiple points in the episode that showed how Daredevil and the police found a location. I just didn't really pay attention. My bad. But back to the action. I, again, love the fight choreography. It looks so clean and so cool to just see how Daredevil fights Muse and how Muse tries to fight Daredevil, or how he's still trying to make his art, even though he is fighting Daredevil to begin with. But one thing I was not expecting was that Matt didn't stop Muse. The person who stopped Muse was Kristen herself. She was bleeding out, but she took a gun that was there and shot Muse to death. And I was genuinely shocked. I legit thought maybe Daredevil had done it. Maybe because I just didn't see the scene that well, but I was just genuinely surprised. And obviously he was going to try to tend to her wound and he was trying to help her. But seeing all that blood, oh jeez. And then finally the task force come in and find Kristen there. So good job, task force. You did absolutely nothing. But I think this whole thing goes into something because later on we'll see why this entire thing is actually kind of relevant. Because when they capture Muse, who apparently is dead now, which I'm not sure if that's going to be 100% true because there's still a lot more episodes, so what's going on? But also, we see that they actually, take care of Kristen and probably put her to the hospital. But what Fisk does here is the most slimiest thing I think I've seen Fisk do in a long time. He takes credit for Daredevil's work. He basically tries to tell all his task force that, hey, you're the heroes of the city. You're the heroes. Daredevil is nothing. He is the criminal. He is the bad guy. You are the ones who deserve this honor. And one thing that I found so interesting was that the task force, the main guy, did not really seem that into it. He did not want that credit. At least that's what I saw it would look like. And it didn't seem like most of the people in there like that credit. And I'm like, are they going to rebel against Fisk? What are they going to do? Are they going to get more corrupted by him? Because that usually tends to happen. And then there was something I was not expecting at all in this episode. Even though I was not expecting a lot in this episode, I was not expecting the one guy, the Gen Z guy who was supposed to make Fisk look good. I'm sorry, I can never remember his actual name. If you can tell me, please let me know in the comments down below. But he just seemed like a joke. He was nothing. He was annoying. He was stupid. He just felt like a child, right? But in this one scene, he's in Fisk's chair, in his mayoral chair, acting so high and mighty, and basically threatens or coerces BB to change the news to be in Fisk's favor, basically saying that the task force is the one that stopped Muse, not Daredevil. And BB obviously was against it. She is all about the truth. But something about how the guy was talking to her and how he was commanding, he really got trained by Fisk. And I'm not sure if BB is going to even tell the truth, even though she's supposed to. And it would be really bad because she's also the niece of Ben Urich, who's supposed to be about all the truth and everything like that. The truth and justice. So what is she going to do? What do you think? Do you think she's actually going to do it for the next episode? Or do you think she's going to falsify it? But one good thing that we get to see is that Kristen is okay and that, she's not dead and, Matt's there to comfort her. And that's always nice to see, Matt actually being there for people, even outside of his, superhero self. And I don't know if Kristen has a new opinion on Daredevil, if she likes him more or she dislikes it, because she did call Muse a freak who wears a mask. I'm not sure if it's just she was directed at him or she's directed to anyone who wears a mask in general. And that makes me very, curious. And what also got me very curious in a few episodes gets me more interested here. You know how we saw Vanessa, talking to the tracksuit guy, and then that we know that it was her that paid the money, right? And the tracksuit guy was basically saying, "Can I have help from you to overthrow Fisk?" And what happened here, I'm a little confused, because we see that Vanessa is basically texting the address of where Fisk is to this guy. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, she wants him to kill Fisk, her husband. But then what happens was very interesting and kind of predictable, but also not. Because when he goes into the building to kill Fisk, Fisk's bodyguard, who I feel like is the new Wesley basically, shoots him. Shoots the tracksuit guy. And of course, Fisk has no expression. But was Vanessa trying to get her husband killed? Or was she trying to get the tracksuit guy killed in general? I'm not sure who she's playing anymore. And maybe that's the point, because now I feel like Vanessa is the true mastermind of the show, not Fisk anymore, because no one seems to like that Fisk is mayor, not her, not any of the gang members. So what is gonna happen? But again, I like how Fisk does not care. He even says, "Send some of this food to my wife." Does she know about the text? Or again, was this all planned? Was this all made so the tracksuit guy can die? I have absolutely no idea. But hey, that was episode 7 of Daredevil, Born Again. Again, I cannot get enough of this show. It is so fun. It just keeps getting better and better throughout the show. Of course, there are things that are a lot slower. There are things that are not as, fast-paced. But I feel like that doesn't matter. It can be slow. It can be, not as action-packed. And it will still be very fun and very exciting, to watch. And now that Muse is dead, what's going to be the new big bad? Is it going to be Fisk? Is it going to be Vanessa? What's going to happen with BB? Is she going to write her story? What is the Gen Z guy going to do? Again, don't know his name. Is he going to basically be like Fisk's new son, who later on becomes a villain called the Rose? I am not 100% sure. I have a lot of questions. What about you? Do you have any questions? What are your thoughts on this show? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Are there anything you're confused about this episode, or are just wondering? Please let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. We are in the penultimate episode of this show, and it's got me so excited for what comes next. And today, I'll talk about Daredevil, Born Again, episode 8. I am so glad and happy on how the show ended up being. The reason I say that is because we all know that this show was originally something completely different, but it wasn't tested well, so they had cut it, kept things they liked, and made it into the show that we know now, and made it a successor to the Daredevil Netflix show. But because of that, it does feel like a lot of things were either chopped out, added on, all mashed up together, and kind of felt like we were missing context because of that, or that some things were shifted. But I feel like this second to last episode is a culmination to that, because this episode feels like what they were leading towards, something that this show was made for this show. Not anything that was cut or shifted or anything like that. The reason I say that is because of what they talk about and who they talk about. Because when we start this episode, we see Bullseye is back in prison, but back. He's being shifted to a different prison, and it looks like he's being put into general population to probably get killed. Probably by our sweet old mayor, Fisk, right? But on the flip side, we see that Fisk and Vanessa are getting back on track on what they're supposed to be as a couple, as a team. And it looks like they're actually doing better. That Fisk is not wanting to keep secrets from her anymore, which is a good thing, but also not, because, his secrets are usually very bad things. But on the flip side of them, we see that Kristen and Matt's relationship is actually going down. It's not doing well, mainly because of the whole vigilante thing. Because, like I said, I knew this was going to happen. Kristen is mad at vigilantes now. She doesn't like Muse. She doesn't like Daredevil, even though Daredevil had saved her. And Matt even points that out, which is funny because that's him. And of course, he's the one who knows that. He even tries to point out that Daredevil saved her. But technically, she is right because she did save herself. But that's not the whole point she should be looking at. But I feel like the fact that she doesn't like Vigilante is going to keep the fact that he's Daredevil from her, which is never good in a relationship. But this whole thing gets worse because while they're arguing, basically Fisk's right-hand man, the new Wesley, comes in, invites Kristen to a party where all the very powerful people are there, or that she's going to be showcased because of her trauma. And even Matt points out that this is a bad idea, mainly because it is Fisk. And this is where I say that this feels more like the original Netflix TV show because of how nervous Matt is, how uncomfortable he is, how obsessed he is about Fisk. This feels very in line to the old show. But of course, Kristen is not listening, but she invites him to the party to keep an eye on her, ironically. So that's good. But you know how I was saying that Fisk is also trying to bring Vanessa back to his world and, not keep her in the dark? Well, he does that a little too well because they go into the basement, where Fisk supposedly killed Adam. At least that's what I thought. But apparently Adam was still alive, which I don't know how because the beating he had in the last episode he was in was brutal. I legit thought he died. But apparently he's alive, and Vanessa sees, and I was like under the impression that, she would at least somewhat care because she did kind of have an affair with him. So that's interesting. But I find it funny that Fisk was trying so hard, but he's like, I am better. I did not kill him immediately. I kept him alive specifically for you. And this is how you know that they are back in the same page, because when Adam is pleading for his life, pleading so much that he won't tell anyone, Vanessa goes and kills Adam, basically saying that, yeah, she's back with Fisk and back to their evil ways together. So I'm wondering how that's going to be, and it feels right, if that makes sense. But while the two happy couple are doing well, Matt is not so well because McDuffie goes and talks to him about the fact that Bullseye is, back and that he's in prison, but wants to talk with Matt. And this whole thing is making Matt spiral even more, which feels very much in line to Matt himself, especially for what Bullseye did to his best friend. And while things are going bad for Matt, again, it seems like things are really going well for Fisk, because when he's in his office talking about how, his task force is doing great, how it's ruffling up people, and how it's a good thing, which it's not, just strokes Fisk's ego. And then we find out that, the guy that was talking to BB in the last episode to change the news to being that Daredevil didn't stop news, it was the task force. BB actually did that. She actually said on her page that it was the task force, which I am genuinely so surprised. I'm wondering why she did that. I do feel like there's an ulterior motive because of what we see in the end of this episode. But I find it so interesting that the Gen Z guy, again, forgot his name, sorry, Daniel, that's his name, that Daniel was able to get into her head. Or that could just be a reverse psychology thing. I'm not sure. But it looks like Fisk appreciates Daniel so much for this thing. And this is where I do feel like Daniel is Fisk's pseudo son now because of how he's treating him, how he's giving him more responsibilities. So I'm curious if Daniel's going to die, at least in the end of this show. I'm not sure. What do you think? And on the other hand, it looks like Matt is just not doing well even more, because it looks like from what McDuffie told him about Bullseye, he's just making him worse, because when he has a client that obviously is not a good guy, his powers will obviously tell him if the guy is wrong or right, but he can't tell McDuffie. He can't tell that this guy is BSing everyone. So it's really messing him up, and he really can't tell her. But I also think it's because of Poindexter that it's getting in his head, that, it's making him feel like he can't do anything. And I am so sorry for Matt, this pain and anguish. But since that, Matt goes to, I think this is Josie's bar, or it could be that other bar that they mentioned at the beginning of the show. I'm not sure. Because a lady that was from the original show said she was thinking about reopening. Yeah, he was talking to her. They were talking like old buddies, as if this was the previous Netflix show. But Cherry finds him. He really wants to make sure that he's okay, but he obviously wants him to not be Daredevil anymore. And I like that their conversation is very friendly, even though, they're very on opposite sides of what they want to do. But something that I find interesting here is that Matt puts together that Foggy knew about something, about Benny, the guy who had called Foggy before Bullseye had shot him. And I'm generally curious about the whole Benny situation. I don't know anything that happened there, so I am kind of in the dark. I may have just not heard it right, so I'm a little confused there. But apparently it's a big deal because Matt leaves without his cane. So it shows that he's not really thinking about his secret identity, and he's kind of slacking on it, because Josie even points out he didn't bring his cane. So that's interesting. But I guess Matt's curiosity gets the better of him, because he does go to Bullseye and talks to him, but you can see how obviously angry and pissed off Matt is here. And I love the acting here. Bullseye is obviously trying to sound like, oh, I'm just an innocent boy. I'm an innocent guy. I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve to be in this general population place. I don't deserve to die, even though you do. But Matt obviously just can't let this guy die, because that's his whole thing. That's his whole superhero thing. He can't let someone die. I love how Matt helps him in the most brutal way possible. He basically smacks Poindexter's head over and over to the ground and tells the cop he did it to himself to make him seem insane so he can be put in a safer place. That's good on Matt, that, his morals keep him in line, right? That he doesn't want him to die. Even his worst enemy, the guy that killed his best friend. But that will bite him in the ass later. And I'll talk about that when he gets there. But now it's time for a party. And it looks like this is going to be where we're mostly at throughout this episode now. We see BB and Daniel talking with each other, And again, I'm very confused and curious why she lied and basically said that the task force is the one that stopped Muse. But Daniel is obviously being very confident about the whole thing. But I love that BB basically points out how he's being a mama's boy to Fisk, or I guess Papa's boy in this case. But the way they're talking to each other, it could be just how I'm interpreting, but are they trying to make it look like they're having a like romantic fling at all? Because I really would not like that to happen. That would just be weird and stupid, and BB's smarter than that, but maybe not because she did take his bribe, I guess. I don't know. But another thing that's actually very interesting is that we see the swordsman is back, here in this nice party, talking to that one woman that was criticizing Fisk in a few episodes beforehand, but here it looks like she's changing her mind or feeling very threatened, and I do feel like Fisk got to her now because she is very scared, and that gets me worried about the swordsman because later it does bite him in the ass too. I feel like this entire show is people getting bit in the ass a lot. But then we see Fisk and Vanessa being back together after actually killing someone. Vanessa is back in Fisk's arms. You see him wearing a white suit. You see her wearing a red dress. And you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of season 3 of Daredevil. This entire episode feels like an homage to that. What's going on there? The reason I say that is because after this, we see that Poindexter is in a hospital point of like the prison, and we see that he's being taken care of his wounds. And that's a good thing, right? He's finally getting help. Let's see what happens. Well, he uses his teeth, a broken tooth, and shoots it at one of the medical people. And that is an homage to the comics where he does that to someone. At least in the comics, he kills someone through that speed. But in this one, it looks like it just like hits someone's eye. But it still works with the brutality of it, because when Poindexter does get out, he does kill the people there. So he's back and he's ready for revenge from Fisk and Vanessa. At least that's what I think is going on. And that's what I mean, that this episode feels like an homage to season 3, where Poindexter had found out that Fisk had used him and was ready to kill him. And it feels like he's getting back to this position again. But something that I almost forgot to mention, I like what they did. You know how like in season 3, whenever Bullseye was having a mental break, you would hear like this buzzing in his head, like really bad buzzing, right? Well, in here, they enhanced that by giving it a blue tint. Every time he has that feeling, you see blue. We saw that in the beginning of the episode where he got put into general population, and you heard the buzzing in his head. And then there was this nice blue around it. I actually really like that. I like what they do with the colors here. But then we get to see Kristen talk with Vanessa. They're chatting, and she's obviously wanting to check on her clients, making sure they're okay. But I liked how Vanessa was immediately, "Oh, me and my husband, we're together. We're good now. We don't need any help." Again, after killing someone, that's the thing that caused her to love her husband again. That is weird. But we got Matt, who finally showed up and is ready to talk to Kristen about, I think, everything. He's sounding like a madman, to be honest. He's rambling about things that's going on, about why you can't trust Fisk, why you can't be working with him, what he's doing to you, what's going on. And I love that. I love that Matt is acting like a crazed maniac, while us knowing that he is right. He is 100% correct about what's going on here. But Kristen is obviously just a regular person. She doesn't have any ties to any of this. But ever since she started working with Fisk, she did become that. And Matt did mention that in the first time they had a conversation that turned into a fight. And speaking of fights, we do see that Fisk is talking with the swordsman. Even though the swordsman thinks he has the upper hand, talking very smooth, like, how he can be. But then Fisk just throws it back in his face, knowing that he's the vigilante, the swordsman. I love that that's technically his new moniker now. That's actually his name. And I really hope that later on, probably not in this season, but in next season, that he actually ends up wearing a more comic accurate version of his suit. Maybe not 100% exactly, because that suit is not 100% good. They may do like a Hawkeye type thing. But at least I hope they do more stuff with him. But it looks like, Fisk is threatening him with it. That because he knows that he's a vigilante, he's going to go after him. And I do feel like that does scare the swordsman off. And I really hope he doesn't die, to be honest. But speaking of scaring someone off, we see how the task force is actually being very toxic now. Because the main guy that had accused Hector Ayala, the White Tiger, of killing his partner, had found a guy who was recording the party, even though I guess you're not supposed to. He threatens him in the most horrible way. He beats him up, like actual police brutality. And even the chief finds out. He basically tries to tell him that, if you do this, I will punish you, right? But the other guy obviously does not care, to the point where he puts the other guy's hand in a fryer, burning it. And I'm like, oh my god, I thought that the task force did not like what they were doing. But I guess he does. He does like the corrupting power, I guess. I guess I'm 100% wrong, but it does seem to be really getting at the chief a lot. To the point where she talks to BB. And I like that BB isn't stupid. So I don't know what she did last time, but I do feel like she's playing Daniel. Because when she talks with the chief, they talk strategy. They talk about what's going on. She wants to know the truth. She wants to know what's going on. Because the chief even points out why she even lied about the whole Daredevil and task force thing, right? And he even offers to expose what's going on. Because he even points out that he has dirt on these people in the task force. But honestly, I don't think this is going to go far. I do feel like either he's going to get blackmailed from the point where we saw that, Fisk knew that he had probably had a legitimate child, or he may be killed off. And I don't think BB is going to be in danger at all, because I do feel like, she's one of the younger people. So maybe that's why. I'm not 100% sure there. But I do like that there is a fighting chance. But you know about fighting chances with this show. Fighting chances tend to be squashed. But back with the happy couple, we see that Fisk knows that Matt is basically watching him, because he whispers everything that's going on to Matt. And I love that he knows how Matt's powers work, because Matt even talks to him in whispers. And I like that. I like that they know how to have this secret communication. I also like what Matt does, that he goes to them, he acts really stupid, his normal blind ways, and he talks with Vanessa, and it's revealed that Vanessa is the one that put out the hit on Foggy, because she was in charge. I like that he figured out that Fisk was away, so Vanessa was in charge. I like that he was able to figure that out. I didn't really think about it. I thought that maybe Vanessa was the one that, put out that hit. I wasn't 100% sure, but it's cool that we get confirmation that it was her that did it. I wonder why she did it. Maybe it has to do something with that Benny case that they were talking about. Again, I'm not sure. I don't know if they're going to elaborate in the next episode, because the next episode is the last one. But then guess what? Bullseye strikes. But instead of killing Vanessa, Matt goes in and takes the brunt of the hit. And we go into that color coordinated thing, because when he's on the ground, he has that red color. Just like how when Bullseye, when he has that sound, is blue. I find that so interesting. But I'm so interested on the fact that, he does have that moral code, that even his worst enemies, finding out that this lady is the reason why his best friend is dead, and he still goes and saves her. I like that's Matt's greatest strength and greatest weakness. That every time he tries to do good, it's just thrown in his face. But I wonder how he's going to prevail after this. But it looks like there's a whole chaos, because there's a whole shooting, and they're trying to protect everyone now, because Bullseye is back and he's ready for blood. And that gets me so excited for the next and final episode of this season. Well, damn, that was one way to end the season, but was it a good way to end the season? And today, I'll talk about Daredevil, Born Again, episode 9, the final episode of the season. I am so surprised and happy that we were able to actually get this far, to watch the entire show. Now, was it perfect? Obviously not. We all know this show was a Frankenstein mess of plot point, from a show that was not well received to basically a sequel series to the Netflix Daredevil show. But was a good continuation? I honestly think it stumbled in a few places, but I do feel like it found its footing at the end. And I feel like that's because this episode and the last episode was where they knew exactly what to do without having to deal with the mess of the original show they had to work with, basically. And you can really tell that here, because when we get into this episode, we get to see what happened to Poindexter before he got contracted to kill Foggy. It looks like he was in an actual hospital, or at least prison hospital, actually getting medication, actually getting help, or at least getting sedated, so he doesn't get violent, because obviously this man can turn anything into a weapon, as we saw in the last episode where he used his freaking tooth. But we can't have nice things, so Vanessa came in to entice Poindexter to go back into his killer ways and kill Foggy, because Vanessa realized that Foggy was getting close to something she had, worked on. And of course, she's doing illegal stuff, so she wants him and the other guy, Benny, dead, which is nice that we get more confirmation into what's happening. And I noticed that with Poindexter being sedated, he seems more remorseful, or at least not wanting to kill because of his medication. I'm not sure if it's just that, or he actually felt bad. But this is Bullseye, so it's probably just the medication. But one thing that was actually pretty interesting was that this entire scene looked like it was probably happening when Poindexter was ready to shoot Kingpin. Also, that's what I realized. I thought he was going to kill Vanessa, but it was actually directed to Kingpin. I should have mentioned that in the last video. But it's interesting that he's thinking about that, to be honest. Now, since this is the final episode and final video I'm making about this show, at least the first season, I feel like I should have mentioned the intro they've had for this entire show that I just didn't mention because I didn't know where to put it. But I really do like it with the stone structures crumbling down and then Daredevil rising back up. But I'm going to be very honest, I still kind of like the original version where it's more blood, and I love the soundtrack a little bit better. Maybe that's just me. What do you think? Did you like that? Please let me know in the comments down below. But now we're back in the present, right when like Matt, got shot, and then it looks like now he's in the hospital, trying to get better. He's all drugged up. But in his drugged up state, since he obviously can't see, he feels Kristen's hand, and instead of saying Kristen's name, he sends Karen's, which I do feel like was what they were trying to do in the show, because I did feel weird in a few episodes ago where looked like she was jealous of Karen, even though they never really mentioned her until that point. But I feel like that's what they were trying to do with this, which is why they say it here. And it obviously does mess with Kristen, and I do feel like that's going to be a big thing later on. And when Matt's actually able to, be more awake, he asks Kristen and McDuffie, what's happening? Where is Fisk? What is going to happen? He is dangerous. Leave, stay away from him. And obviously, Kristen is very weirded out by this and said, like, he was getting shot at. He's the mayor. And I think maybe this was the point. I'm not sure. But her naivety or not knowing anything that's happening really started frustrating me, because you can tell that at least Matt in this situation is genuinely scared. And I think at this point, she should know Matt's history with Fisk if he said anything about that. He doesn't have to say anything about the Daredevil part, but at least the other stuff, which didn't have to do with anything about Daredevil. But it's weird because McDuffie seems more sympathetic to Matt about what's going on. Yes, she's obviously, like more worried because he does seem like he's going crazy. But she seems more willing to listen, while Kristen is very like, blah, 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 blah. No, he's the mayor. He's doing good. And it really annoyed me. What did you think? Because it was really weird to me, and it goes me into something I do want to talk about a little bit later. But speaking of Fisk, we see him in the aftermath of the shooting, talking with Vanessa, being very happy that, she is alive, which is always weird seeing Fisk actually caring about another person, but it's his wife, so that makes sense. And it looks like he did know what she did in hiring Bullseye, since, he got out. But we finally get to see what he was trying to do with the port, the place that, he was trying to say, oh, it's not for criminal intentions at all. Yeah, he was using it for criminal intentions. He's using it basically like a drug ring, at least from what I noticed at this point. I could be wrong. And you can tell that Vanessa is enjoying this. Like, she's finally happy that her husband is finally being honest with her about it. That his criminal empire is coming back and he's being Kingpin again. And Vanessa is the right-hand man now. Well, the wife in this case, right? But it looks like we're all sort of full circle, because Daredevil's back and Kingpin is completely back now with his woman. And we see everything going well for Kingpin, because he is having a meeting about shutting down the city, about sealing everything off because of Poindexter, and probably so, he can have much more control. And seeing his rage, seeing his anger, you can see the fear on everyone else's eyes. Gallo is obviously not as scared because, he's a cop too. But from what happens later on, maybe he should have been a little more scared. But I'm really confused about this one specific part, right? He talks to his right-hand man about, Matt's condition, right? And I thought they were going to do a thing where, like, since that Matt basically saved Kingpin, that Kingpin couldn't really go after Matt or expose him at all, since, he saved him. But it looks like they're switching it up, that actually he is willing to kill Matt or get his right-hand man to do it. So I don't know why Matt would even do this in the first place. Well, obviously it's for him being a good person and, actually wanting to make sure he doesn't die, which at this point, Matt, you should have let him die. You let Poindexter out and he killed people, and then you just caused your worst enemy to be even more in charge, which is a terrible decision. And now he's after to kill you, so there you go. But besides all that, we get to see that Fisk is talking to his secretary lady. I always forget her name. I'm sorry. I finally figured out Daniels, but her name always escaped me. But it looks like Fisk is talking to her, basically asking who is on his side, who is loyal to specifically him, which is horrible. But he basically asks everyone who is in and who's not in. And I really don't like what she does, but I thought she would actually be a good person in this case. But I guess that's not really true, because she does end up talking to Gallo, who obviously is not on Fisk's side. And Gallo even points out how bad Fisk is getting or is being. And she seems to be on his side kind of, because she's giving him ways out, which I am so glad that he's finally having a way out. But again, we know this leads into something bad. Speaking of something bad, the right-hand man to Fisk is in the hospital, ready to kill Matt. But obviously Matt heard that, which is always cool to see Matt's powers. And then he just escapes. So that's cool. And since Matt was able to finally escape, he went to his home, right? Since there is a blackout, which I'm not sure where this blackout came from. Was it because of Fisk? I have no idea. But you know who else is in Matt's apartment? Frank Castle is back for the season finale. I was not expecting that because I heard that, he was only going to be here a very short amount of time. But the fact that he's here makes it all worth it, especially for what happens. Because Matt and Frank's whole dynamic in this episode is very friend-brother-like. They hate and love each other at the same time, and you can tell that. And their ideologies are still very different. Matt will not kill anyone, while Punisher literally does. I feel like all the gore, all the brutality is mainly from Punisher in this episode and Fisk in a little bit later. But I do love the fact that Matt and Frank do team up together. They work so well. But something that I find really interesting here as well is the fact that the police are after Matt Murdock and they were ready to kill him. Now, the reason why I find that strange isn't just because of the fact that they're going after Matt, it's because why are they going after Matt? I don't think that Fisk told them that he is Daredevil, he's a vigilante, because if he does, Vanessa goes to jail. At least I still think that's the case. I don't know if that could still happen now. But this entire part was so awesome. The fighting that happened, the ninja moves that Matt was able to do, and then Punisher's brutality. He didn't let anyone live. And you can tell that Matt still doesn't like this. He was trying to tell Frank to stop killing, but Frank did not. And I like the fact that their ideology were still in clash while they were fighting. And I love how you can tell how each one fights. You can see Matt is a little more with technique and skill, while Frank is very brutal and animalistic and rageful, since he actually kills people. This entire scene was just so cool to watch and very bloody. Like I said, I think a lot of the brutality and gore comes from the Punisher, to be honest. Like, Matt breaking bones, in the beginning of the show, is one thing, but Frank slitting throats, stabbing people like nothing, and blowing people's brains off is a whole different thing. So yeah, but when they were done with everything, with all the fighting and basically killing, there was one guy left, and it looked like it was the guy that kicked Hector Ayala, the White Tiger, and kind of knew it was this specific guy because of the leaks that came out. And if you didn't, did you think it was a twist? Did you know, or did you also think that this guy had killed the White Tiger? I'm curious about that. But obviously, Matt and Frank are having their discussions about whether this guy lives or dies. And to make that point, Frank literally killed another one of the soldiers, or police officers, which I do think did not deserve that death, to be honest. While this guy still survived. And the only reason why he survived, because I do feel like Frank would have killed him, is because there was a grenade throwing at them and they had to jump to escape. Now, I do feel like that one police officer, the one that killed the White Tiger, is dead now. So I do feel like his storyline is just done. And I wish they had done more with that, to be honest. And I will talk about that a little bit more in the end of this video. And the way they survive is obviously with Matt's Billy Club. They escape the window and they basically crash on the car. But then we get to finally see who had brought Frank to finally save Daredevil. Because we saw that he was kind of secluded, and we were going to be wondering how he got back. And it looked like it was because Karen is back. That's awesome. I missed her so much in this entire show. I'm glad they finally brought her back to the show, and I'm glad they were able to bring everything back together. With her, now it feels like a successor to the Daredevil show, because it feels like we're all back. Yes, Foggy's dead, but it does feel like a family's back together, and we get more of that when we see, they're hiding out, and Matt and Karen are talking together and acting like old buddies, talking about what's been going on, how they feel about each other, and how they still really care about it, as, being very cheeky about it. Now, this also gets me into something that I do want to talk about, and I will be a little longer, so bear with me. These two have so much chemistry, and that's probably because the actors have, played the same actors for a long time in the last show, and maybe it has to do something with it, but I do feel like Matt in the show had literally no real chemistry with Kristen at all. They just felt like they were trying to be a relationship, but there was way too much conflict in it to, feel like actually something was going on. Yes, I know, maybe that was a point. Maybe that Matt is too closed off and wants his old life back, but never felt like there was any love between it, even though Kristen and Matt had said they love each other so much. But while here, it feels like we're back to the old status quo of Karen and Matt being very sweet to each other. So I'm not sure about this entire situation. What do you think? Do you like that she's back? Does this feel like the old Daredevil show now? Or do you still wish that it was a little different? But Frank is obviously, done with everything. He was there to help Matt because Karen had asked him, but even Karen points out that, he does care. Even though he acts like a cold monster, he does care about these people. And you can obviously tell that because Frank and Karen have had this like sibling bond, and it was so sweet. But while that's going on, we get to see what Daniel's up to since, he has more power and is more in control. He's basically trying to see what the council is doing and how he can make him be more on Fisk's side and basically having a shit list, basically, on who Fisk can probably kill. And I'm wondering how manipulative and evil Daniel is becoming or enjoying the power because he feels like he's having so much control now. Now, obviously, beforehand, I just thought of him as a joke and maybe that was what he was supposed to be, but it looks like he's actually trying to be a danger. And I do feel like he will become the Rose, at least later on. And I hope so because I don't want him to just be a random character. I feel like he'd be a waste. But then we also get to see how the city is reacting to everything with the BB report. And again, I do like this entire thing where it feels like the city is more connected to Daredevil than he did beforehand with this, whole thing, and how the city is dealing with this blackout, and it seems bad. People are losing, people are going crazy, burning things. And this becomes a very bad thing for one person because he's obviously trying to steal stuff because, it's a raid, but he gets stopped by the police and he surrenders, but they immediately shoot him and they pretend he was a vigilante, even though he was a kid. And I didn't expect the police to use vigilantes as an excuse to kill them. Like, I knew they were going to abuse their power, but not like this. Dang, that's bad. What are they going to do about the people who have COVID masks? Because people still wear those. Are they dead? But back to Matt and Karen. Again, I love their dynamic. It feels like we're back home, if that makes sense. They're basically trying to figure out what happened and why Foggy was shot. Like, they basically went to a place where they can find evidence, find old cases to figure out what happened, right? And I like this little thing because they go into one of the cases and Matt finds an engraving of avocados, and I find it funny that they were able to bring this joke back. This is where they were able to bring back an old joke from the original series where Matt and Foggy in college were talking about what they were doing and how Foggy should have spoke Spanish, and he basically misspelled the Spanish word for lawyers, abogados, to avocados, and that became a running joke. And I liked how they were able to, bring that back, of making it more obvious that this is the Daredevil Netflix successor. And it was really heartwarming. I really felt that, and it was really sweet. But back to business, they are obviously figuring out what happened, how Foggy got shot, and it turned out because he actually was getting really close to something he was not supposed to by Vanessa, and Vanessa needed him out of the way with also Benny. And it feels so sad that he was just doing his job and it caused him to be killed. And it was because he was getting into the ports, right? He was figuring out that she was doing something illegal in the ports. And now Fisk is mayor. He's doing so much to the ports to have more control and basically have every illegal thing be legal there, because apparently that's a very gray area. And basically Matt has to figure out how to stop that. But you know how, Matt and Karen are figuring out what's going on? We get to see what Frank's doing, and he's basically just trying to sulk and figure out what he's doing with his life because, he does care about Matt, he does care about Karen, and he wants him to be okay. So you know what he does? He goes back out there to fight more of the cops, but he gets overwhelmed and he gets beat up very bad. He did put up a good fight and killed a lot of the cops, but it really was bad. And you can tell that these were all fanatics of the Punisher because they were wearing Punisher Skull bulletproof vests as well, which I do want to talk about in a second. But then while he is knocked out, we get to see what happened to Gallo. He's trying to finally escape, talking Fisk's right-hand woman and to basically ask for help. And he basically gets this guy, who apparently is his friend, to help him leave. But obviously this does not happen because he gets dragged to this very secluded place with Fisk and a bunch of his task force wearing Punisher logos. And speaking of Punisher logos, we get to see where Frank was held, and it looks like there was a bunch of these guys wearing the Punisher logo, basically talking about how they admire him, how they love him, about what he's doing. And Frank is spitting in their faces, basically saying, they're clowns, they're stupid, this is a circus, right? And I like this, but I do feel like it misses a lot of what the Punisher originally said in his original comics, where in real life, a lot of police officers would have the Punisher logo on their gear. And then he had to tell police officers to not follow him. He strictly had to tell them that. And I feel like him not telling any of the cops at all kind of makes it harder for people to know that his logo is a bad thing. You are not supposed to have that on your body, if that makes sense. I feel like the fact that, he just calls him a clown is strictly only to these people who wear the Punisher logo, not to anyone who does that, not any police officers, not any military people. I feel like that kind of dulls down the message, at least to me. What do you think? Do you think this message was well done here, or do you think that it was dulled down? I'd really like to know. But since, he basically says no, he gets knocked out again. And honestly, I thought they'd kill him, to be honest. But speaking of killing, we go back to seeing what Gallo is doing with Fisk and the police. Fisk is basically saying, how Gallo is stopping him from saving the city and saying, he's terrible and all this stuff. And he did something I did not expect him at all to do at all. He crushes his skull and you actually see it. I was genuinely sweating bullets when I saw that. I was surprised how gruesome they were able to be. We obviously saw people's necks getting sliced, bullets getting shot at them, right? And we got to see people get really broken up, right? But this guy's face got smushed and we saw it. And that was brutal. But I do feel like there was a problem here. It was brutal, but I felt like it could have been much more brutal if he had screamed in pain. The fact that he didn't scream in pain kind of dulled down the fear of it all. I think screams do embody a lot of our fear factors when it comes to, because it does feel real. Maybe that was a thing they couldn't do, that it was too far, because they did make Fisk karate chop Gal's neck before, so he doesn't scream. So maybe that was the point, but I feel like that scream could have made it more impactful and much more sad. But nonetheless, this was still extremely brutal and very gross and very awesome, to be honest. And we got to see the strength of Kingpin. That was cool. But since that happened, everything feels so hopeless. Nothing feels like it could, get better. And you can see that when Karen and Matt are talking about what to do. Since Fisk has everyone now. He has the police. He has the people. He is in the government. He has true power, and Matt is literally one guy. And even though I feel like there should be more superheroes, and I feel like that's a problem, and that became a problem when they couldn't add Spider-Man's cameo in this show. It makes it feel like everyone else is a little more selfish, and it makes Sony really stupid, because then this would have been really cool. But nonetheless, it does make Matt feel very sheltered and feel very out of his depth. But I do like that Karen and Matt still bond over what they can and try to feel and actually try to do the best. And since, Fisk has an army, Matt will get an army for himself as well. But the next morning, we get to see how everything happened in the aftermath. We get to see that Fisk recruits Kristen to his side as a mental health person in Fisk's campaign now, which is really not that good. Why did she not listen to anything Matt had said? Does she not believe him at all? Is she doing this to infiltrate Fisk's organization? I don't know. Kristen can go either way, because I'm going to be very honest, her character was very okay, to be honest. I wish she got more attention, but what can we do? And then we get to see how everyone else is dealing with it, and that Fisk is making himself feel much better by using Gallo's quote-unquote disappearance, his death, as a marketing stunt for everyone to believe him, to want him to fix everything, because he basically says that Gallo left to escape from everything. Because technically that was what he was going to try to do, but he's dead now. He can't do anything about that. And also he can't rat out all the people in the task force. So what's going to happen there? We see BB's there. We see how Angela's dealing with it. Come on, girl. You got to be the next White Tiger. Come on, save the city too. You have the power. But then we also get to see how Matt and Karen are doing about everything. Nothing is going well. Nothing is going their way. But it looks like they are getting that team. They go to Josie's. Karen and Matt are talking, and they go and sing all the people that are on Daredevil's side. But since Matt had his mask off and was talking to Karen, does everyone know that Matt is Daredevil at this point? Cherry knows. Karen knows. I'm not sure if anyone else does. And I'm saying that because he does put his mask back on. So what's going on here? And how are they going to stop Fisk? And speaking of Fisk, we get to see that his entire world is coming together, because him and Vanessa go back down to the basement that he had to contain Adam, and now he uses it as a prison for all the vigilantes, everyone that he deems unfit to be in civilization. Looks like they kept the swordsman there and the Punisher. I thought these people would be dead. I don't know why he has these presents. Does he think they will give him knowledge? Because usually, if they don't serve any purpose to the Kingpin, he just kills them. So what's the point? Is it so people don't assume that these guys are dead? What is going on here? But he's got his power, and it looks like Daniel is trying to be a mini Fisk because of how he moves. Tries to act very Fisk-like. He obviously has a power chip and is getting very messed up. And I'm actually pretty excited on what's going to happen to him in the next season because I want to see if he actually becomes a supervillain. Now, that would be the finale of Daredevil, but they have an end credit scene of Frank getting this guy to trust him, one of the security guards, to make him feel safe and, give him a handshake, and is able to escape and is probably going to get everyone out. So that's awesome. So that was Daredevil, episode 9, the finale. And I actually really liked this episode. This episode did not feel like any filler, any cut Frankenstein thing together. It felt like its final thing that they're able to do. Yes, this episode does have that, Netflix thing of not really ending, but I'm giving it slack because they get another chance in season 2, and season 2 will most likely not be a mess. Will actually be a cohesive story without another version of the show holding it down. And I really like that. So I am very excited for season 2. Yes, I know there was leaked images of what Daredevil will look like in that season. I really am happy that he finally has the double Ds and has the black suit. I'm wondering why he wears the black suit, but I'm gonna hold my thoughts until the next season. But this show was a wild ride to get through. It originally was really fun to review, but after a while, it started getting really weird. Not because the show was bad. Yes, there were things that did feel a little weird, but it's because I got copyrighted like shit throughout this entire show. I don't understand why a lot of people have reviewed this show, and I have mentioned it a few times. I don't know why, to the point where I know this video will probably not get out when I want it to. It'll probably get out probably a week after this show had already finished. And that's probably because I had a lot of editing, because this video probably took me longer to do, and I have to get through copyright stuff. But I am still happy with the fact that I reviewed it. Now, will I review it for the second season? I am not 100% sure. Maybe I'll start for the first episode, and I hope they don't copyright me, but if it doesn't work, then I hope that this was a fun ride watching me review this show. But if we do get to the next season, come with me to watch that next season. But if there's nothing else, this has been Dunamite. I hope everyone stays 30, and I hope to see everyone in the next video. Bye!